Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. I know it's the crunch of the spring semester. We will just give folks a few more minutes to join. A big thank you to Zakia for the heads up that we are already live streaming so that folks know as you join. We already have 6 schools present, but we will give folks just a couple minutes to hop on. But thank you all, and we'll get started here in just a couple. All right. Okay. So we have, I'm trying to make sure we're sticking to that shorter meeting time, right, for everybody. So I was just doing like a quiet roll call. We actually already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 9 schools, so we good. So thank you everyone who's here. I do have one person on the screen that I didn't know unless they changed their name. since I've looked, maybe they did. I thought I saw someone named Sana and I didn't know Asana, but I don't see Sana anymore. So whoever that was changed their name, and I recognize all names now. So it's a pleasure to have you all. I'll go ahead and share my screen. This is a quick overview of our agenda today. You all have this as well if you want to reference it throughout. We will be doing our shortened version of reports. As always, if you have anything else you want to know from reports, feel free to reach out to any of the executives or directors. We welcome that, as well as the student regions and our advisors. Then we have our guest speakers from Huron Consulting Group who are coming in, who are seeking student leader perspectives, and we'll be having what I've seen their guiding questions. I think will be a very engaging and lively discussion with them. We'll then have a quick break. We'll go into general reports, campus report highlights from those of you who've turned those in, and then we'll do our breakout rooms as usual. So with that, we will delve right in and not waste any time with our reports. So as it is each person's turn, please do feel free just to unmute yourselves. So on my end, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. You all have been really agile and checking and responsive with all the different votes we've been asking you to do. So it's been a pleasure because we've been able to then act upon what the different schools want. We have had a trend throughout the General Assembly where every single bill that we've presented to students that we found directly relevant to students, everyone has overwhelmingly supported. So thank you for that. It means that we were able to do written and/or oral testimonies, or helping to coordinate those oral testimonies for several bills, but I'll let government relations cover that in more depth. We, like usual, representing at different meetings, including the Chancellor's Council and things with CUS and CUSIP and so forth. A couple things just to put on everyone's radar from my end. MHEC, which was the Maryland Higher Education Commission, where Kyle Deanan is the chair of the students. He really wants to do something with all of us because they have the proposed 5-year plan now, and he wants the USMSC to participate in that public comment process. And then also CUSIP, which is our sister council for faculty, is continuing to work on academic integrity, and their chair reached out to me again, hoping to set something up with us to get student feedback on academic integrity. And then on the executive board side, we're starting to already realize that some of you will be having your general election soon. So we're putting things in place for a smooth transition and looking at the bylaws to see if there's any ways to set up our future leadership team for success. With that, I will pass it off to Bernetta, our VP of Undergrad Affairs.
Thank you, Annie, and good morning, everyone. Just a few quick updates. So we're still attending the Chancellor's Roundtables with students from across all of your institutions. I attended the last one. Those are always such a joy to be a part of and so insightful. The most recent one, I believe the topic was on DEI. A very engaged group of students and really great representation from all of your universities. And so there was a lot of conversation. Without going into too much detail, I'm going to be working with the DEI team, so Paige and Tangela, and everyone else on that committee to kind of convey those concerns and talk through what we've been hearing from our students. So expect more to come on that. Additionally, we met with USM recently to talk about their branding initiative and the work that their task force is doing. And we gave them a lot of good feedback. So that was myself, Laura, and Yvonne also attended that. And as y'all know, we had our special meeting before that to talk to you all collectively as well. So everything that you shared with us, we conveyed to USM as well. So they're really excited to have us involved, really love the commentary and the feedback from you all. And just stay tuned for more to come on that as well. And then lastly, our town hall meeting, we are still planning for that. I think we have another meeting coming up soon in about a week or so. We have a one-pager that should be coming to you. Some of you may already have it, just to summarize what this event is and what we need you all to be able to share with special guests and speakers and things along those lines. So stay tuned for more on that. And Laura, I think you're up next.
Thanks, Bernetta. And thanks everyone for making time today and last week. I know these meetings can take up a big chunk of our lives. I know USMSC as a whole is a big time commitment, and I want to support everyone to make sure that we're an overall success. This month, I spent a lot of time looking at what USMSC produces for USM students and our council, and discussing internal strategies on several levels for improvement. We took the feedback from the survey in January and focusing on our USM commitments and our needs right now and how to plan for the future, which is coming fast. Collaboration and idea sharing is a big priority for you guys. And I want to add in this vein, please, everyone here, feel safe reaching out to the team and communicating your concerns proactively. So we can devise strategies to accomplish our shared goals and lean on each other when we need to.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Great. We've had a good month. It's we had a special board meeting this past week to help with a Towson concern of expanding funding for their science center, and so that's in the works and is continuing to be built at Towson University. We also had a board meeting last month on the 19th, which went well. Just a few new academic programs and all the good normal stuff that we've normally got at board meetings going on, so nothing too far out of the ordinary there. We also just had a very productive education policy and student life meeting just this past Friday. And so lots of good things coming out of that. And I got to say, I'm very excited. I know a number of you are at UMGC. I'm very excited about a couple new degree programs that we'll have at UMGC pretty soon, pending full board approval. And so great things going on, and nothing too exciting, but I'd be happy to just answer any questions. If anybody wants to message me, I'll message you back. And just following up from a week or two ago, our special meeting, Just thank you for just the wonderful communication we continue to have. It's been a joy working with you all, and I know we're entering the final stretch here, but hopefully we will continue to make great progress.
Good morning. I wanted to share, and I know Bernita already touched on this a little bit, but our 1 year into the pandemic together town hall update is going to be happening on Thursday, April the 8th, with a backup date of April the 15th. Oh, I'm in there now to welcome me as the new co-director. Thank you. I didn't see that. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And we're currently in the process of inviting panelists to the panel, and then we'll be going through to finalize the live stream method, finalize the student question form, so that way we can get a wide range of discussions of things that are important for each of the students at the different colleges. And Dan and Daniel and I spoke about doing a straw poll to determine the best time to start the panel. So in a little bit, I'm guessing we'll put something up just to share probably in the chat box about what time works best for everyone. And then our next meeting is going to be Sunday, March 14th at 11 a.m.
Thanks, Matt. We really do welcome you. Matt's popped in here and there for USMSC, y'all, so he kind of knows us, but Matt's from UMGC, and we do welcome you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I'm sorry for not having my camera on. Unfortunately, I'm having technical issues, but for our updates this month, we had a really good month. We had our last committee meeting on the 19th, and we had some really good conversations. We started some committee projects like the no contact order, and we start looking into different diversity groups at each school. So we're working on that. We have some really good ideas. Also, on the 19th of next month, actually, we switched it to the 26th because everyone is going on spring break, or most schools. So on March 26th at 5:30 p.m., we will have our next committee meeting. And I can send in the link in the chat to everyone. So yeah.
All right, just checking. Can everybody hear me, or can anybody hear me? Okay, excellent. Thanks. Hi, guys. Yeah, so just a quick update from the Mental Health Committee. Our next meeting would be March 18th at 7 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. Again, it's very important to kind of note the time zone of those meetings, because we do have a lot of participants that want to chime in or want to come in from across the country or even across the world, in the case of some of our UMGC students. A quick update of something that we did in February, reached out for the government relations team and got them a statement of support to put the crisis line onto student IDs. So that's a quick update there. And thank you to the government relations team for reaching out. And if you guys have anything else coming up related to the Mental Health Committee, or that we can quick turn around to support you, please let us know. The next meeting is going to focus on commentary and retooling the boilerplate language to share with staff and other teams. We have talked about adding a statement to syllabi about mental health services that are available and about different resources for students in crisis. I'm having some wonderful experiences right now on the front line trying to navigate these processes myself, and it's been very educational to me. And then we should be adding that to the OneDrive as well. So particularly that meeting or around then, I want to make sure that all the other directors know and all the students on USMSC know that you can also offer commentary on that and kind of read and retool where we're going on that. So I will send out a link to everyone as well once that's on the OneDrive, just so you know it's there, and that you know around that time we're going to discuss it, because it would be great to have your input as well. So that is it for us for now.
Annie, this is Joe Boffin. Could I just add one quick thing on mental health? Wanted to make sure you all knew that there is a bill in the legislature about a task force on mental health in higher education that we have submitted supportive testimony on. from the system and look forward to working with that. Don't know exactly where it is. I'll have to check at the beginning of this week, but we expect that to pass.
Question, and this is for Ms. Bellman. Do you know if that's the bill that's referring to the day off, that 1 day off per year for mental health? Is that the bill that you're talking about?
No, this is a major task force that will include people from higher education, the legislature, all kinds of experts, and so on, to investigate further about mental health services in higher education.
Yep, I see. Thanks.
I had a question about that also. Is that the one, because I know there were like 2 different bills that had task force related to them. Is that the one that, well, I think neither of them had students on them, but it had like related to students, or like, you know, a parent of someone who was in the system, but it didn't have a student on there?
I think that's right, Dan.
Okay. All right, so for fees, more Arsalan, Yvonne stuff, big of time, obviously, for all these different bills. And so we'll have our next student fee meeting Tuesday, March 30th at 8 p.m. But in between that, there are 2 hearings coming up, one in the Senate, and the other one I think is like the 16th, which is in the House. And so the final language is still not updated, but those will be submitted as amendments. But we appreciate everyone supporting it and the system support, USMSC supporting it, and look forward to people's testimonies. I know Max is testifying and some people from College Park are, so thank you for that.
I will go ahead and say, Annie, that the system will be submitting testimony as well. We are supporting with amendments that are in line with the language changes that Senator Rosapep has already been working with a variety of people on. So we'll be in support with amendments.
Thanks for the update. I saw Dan nodding, so that's a good sign. Cool. Gov Relations.
Good morning, everyone. So earlier this month, or about last month, we had Advocacy Day. Now this year, Advocacy Day was a little bit different. They only had 3 or 4 students attend for some reason. I'm not sure why or what the reason was behind that, but that's what I heard. But you know, it was a good Advocacy Day. We met with 1 or 2 senators, and we talked about the students' perspective on the USM. As for updates on the Maryland General Assembly, we have been pushing for several bills, and thank you all for that really quick turnaround. I know we don't have that much time for those votes. I would love to give you all like at least a week or 2, but because the MGA is only 90 days long, things move pretty fast. So thanks so much for supporting us and you know, being really responsive. So we appreciate that a lot. Student fees bill. This is a bill that I think we voted on last week. So we submitted written testimony for that bill, and we look forward to supporting that bill in both the House and in the Senate chambers. The Hunger-Free Campus bill. This is a bill that's the vote's still going on. So if you guys have not voted on that bill, please go ahead and do that. So we will, once we're done with that vote, we will work with folks in the House and the Senate to help, advocate for this bill. And we're also working with a few folks outside of the MGA to help build some support behind this bill as well. The Jordan McNair bill, this is a bill that was, pretty big, pretty nice bill. We already voted on it several weeks ago. It seems like it's going in a good direction. We have quite a bit of support from both the House side and the Senate side, but if you have any questions in particular, then I'd be happy to answer them as well. And then lastly, we have our meeting today at 5 p.m. And our meetings are bi-weekly. So if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us or attend our meetings.
I have a quick question for you, Arsalan. Do you still need votes for the Future Act? I don't see it on this list, and I'll stop nudging people if we missed the window or if that one's.
So we didn't necessarily miss that window, because the hearing for the Senate, I believe, I think there was one hearing already for the House or the Senate, one of those 2. But I don't think we missed the window. We can still take in votes, and we're still, if we get in the votes, then we'd be happy to advocate for that bill as well.
All right, cool. We have, just so you all know, we have 5 schools who voted, including Shady Grove, y'all are rock stars. You voted 5 times. So we have 5 yeses. I know Shady Grove really likes the Future Act. But we've heard from a few of the other schools, but if you haven't voted on the Future Act and it's something you care about, please do. It was on the email for today, so there's an easy link for you if you just want to go and vote on that. But thank you so much, Arsalan, for the updates.
No problem. And kind of a little update, and in case you guys didn't notice, for each of these bills, we have a 1-pager. Folks in our committee took a lot of time out to read the whole bill, to look over the fiscal and policy note of that bill, and to include all of them in that 1-pager. So I know some of those bills look a little bit daunting. Some of them are several pages long. Some of them have quite a bit of heavy language and heavy text in there. So please feel free to use the 1-pager. We took a lot of time to help you guys, and so hopefully that is a bit of help for you guys.
Totally. Thank you all for doing those.
Sure.
All right, communications and marketing, Niv.
Hi there. So I've been working on some strategies to improve our communication. For those of y'all who follow us on Instagram, I've been added a link tree to our website so that when we have certain bills or certain links we want people to access, it's really difficult when you put it in the caption because there's no way to get to a page. So I added a link tree. So every time we have certain announcements or we want to have links to a live stream or just read this bill, you can just click on link tree and it'll give you all the links to all our relevant USMSC activities. I did that recently for the bill that we recently did on student fees. I put a link there. So if anybody ever wants to they're on the phone and they want to read the bill, you can get there quickly. I'm also going to try and work with all our directors to make sure that I promote the activities of all the directors' initiatives and committees really well. And then what does it have? The USME Success Form, I have been reaching out to people personally to just help fill it up. For those of you all who have done it, thank you so much. And the other thing which I've been working on with Student Affairs, primarily Daniel, is for the town hall. We want to release a COVID-19 anniversary video. I reached out to many institutes via email at the end of Feb, and I've got about 12 people who expressed interest. So currently we're in the process of getting these videos. And then I set the deadline as March 29th for people to submit videos. And so a big thank you to everybody who's agreed to help out. And if you're still interested in participating in the video, just drop me an email or send something in the chat. I'll be happy. We want to get all schools represented in this video. So if you are interested or you don't know ways you can help out, do drop a line in the chat or an email. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Niv. And to our advisors.
Zakia, do you want to go first?
If I find my unmute button. The only thing I was going to say was about the chancellor's chat, and Bernetta covered that. The only thing I would add is if you are not sure who's representing your institution, one second, you all, I have too many things going on with the live stream, the audio, it's too much. Okay. If you don't know who's representing your institution, I would recommend that you talk to your Vice President for Student Affairs and just connect with the students and pull them in, see how things are going, just to maintain that connection with the system, the students that are representing your school, because we do go to the Vice Presidents for Student Affairs and ask them for those names depending on the topic or the group that's being represented that day. So they've been going very well. The Chancellor is quite pleased and enjoys having that time with students. And I just want to make sure that connection is still there with you all, partially which happens because the executive board represents themselves too. So we do make sure we let those students know about USMSC so they can stay connected. And there may have been something else, but I'm blanking on it at the moment.
Okay, so, I've got 2 or 3.
Niv's hand is up. I don't know if it's for me. So Niv.
I had a question. When is the next Chancellor's chat, and do you know what the topic is?
Good question. It's going to be in April. We have to skip March, excuse me. It's at the end of April. Give me a second, Niv. But they're not open to the public. I should make sure that's clear.
Oh, I was just curious so that whenever it's there, I can ask somebody to take like a screenshot so that we can just promote it on our social media stuff.
I have them and I'll send them to you. Already do that. So
Yep.
you may want to take the 3 that I'll send you and you can use those as, you know, this already happened, but the chancellor met with international students. He met with students on DEI. So got you. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's super cool, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 quick things, Annie. First of all, on the hunger-free bill, want the student council to understand that basically in this bill, it's a grant program. All of our campuses do already have food banks and deal with the students who are most challenged around hunger. But all of our vice presidents for student affairs and so on weighed in and said, if there were ever more money available, we would gladly go after it and expand our services. So we in fact submitted testimony to that effect too. On the academic integrity situation, let me give you just a tiny bit of context here. We are working with CUSIF, who is moving forward on trying to get their heads around the broad topic of academic integrity to in fact make it much more into a culture change and positive thing rather than just focusing on cheating and the repercussions of cheating. So we're very much encouraged by that. Right now, CUSIF is learning kind of the hard way just how hard it is to make the sausage, meaning write the policies in such a way that any policies would be overarching for the system and not get confused with guidelines or process on each campus. So we're doing a lot of discussion, but it's a very rich discussion. I wanted you all to know that. Our campuses are all planning for fall. I'm sure all of you have seen a variety of announcements from your campuses, and we encourage you to stay in touch with that. Nate on his slide actually had a bullet on spring break and then didn't actually address that. So Nate, I'm going to and say that's what I'm losing sleep over now. I personally, and I think many people have real concern about several of our southern states here in the United States opening wide up, no masks, no nothing. And we have real concerns about students who, I want spring desperately, I want warm weather desperately as well. But we have real concerns about students going away and then coming back and possibly bringing COVID back with them. So any way that that you as the leadership for the students can encourage people to hang in a while longer with masks and distancing and so on, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And my last comment is I will be sending out probably on Tuesday to all of you, either tonight or tomorrow morning to all of our vice presidents for student affairs, the website that students can go to volunteer at vaccination sites. And it will be, students will be a part of the Maryland MRC, the Medical Reserve Corps. When you go to the site, you click on become a member, and then it will ask you for your information, what time slots, on what days you'll be available, and then you will be contacted from the manager of the database to find exact times, dates, and so on. In the 24 hours that were reported last night, it's the first day that in the state of Maryland, we've gotten 50,000 shots in arms in one 24-hour period. But we are in this for the long haul. It's going to take us quite a while. And I would love to have lots of students volunteering for 1 or 2 or 3 shifts, either half day or a whole day. I personally think it would be something that you would remember for the rest of your life as having been part of. And it's certainly an opportunity to be engaged and see a broad cross-section of the Maryland population. So I will be getting that announcement out to all of you, and we look forward to people being engaged. I will be able to work with the database manager and find out how many students from which campuses have been volunteering. I would love to see hundreds of names on that list over the next several weeks.
It looks like we have a question from Dan.
Yes.
One's about that, one's about spring break. So students can volunteer for just like half a day and just do it like
Yes.
once when they can help out. It doesn't have to be on an ongoing basis.
That's right. It would be easier in the long run if a student could take 2 or 3 shifts, if you will, because if every shift there were a bunch of new volunteers, it would be slightly chaotic. But this is not a long-term commitment, and there are weekend days as well as weekdays for mornings or afternoon, or morning to early afternoon into evening. So there are going to be plenty of slots for students to sign up in. And when you put in where you live and which campus you're from, there will be the opportunity to go to the mass vaccination site nearest you. So we're trying to make it as convenient as possible. But I have to tell you that they did the beta test with the Hopkins students, and they're doing film, and they're going to be on the news tonight and stuff. Talk about how wonderful it is to have Hopkins students. Well, I'm still pretty competitive. I would love for us just to put them way in the dust, and in fact show that our students are not only active, are not only civically engaged, but are really committed to, in fact, beating COVID. And this is the way we're going to do it. So thank you all ahead of time, and I'll get that out to all of you in leadership position. As I say, I think it'll be Tuesday when I get that email out to you. I'm talking to the student affairs people to figure out how else we can get it out from the student affairs offices to the campus in general. But I'm counting on you all to help engage other students as well.
And did you have a spring break question too?
I did. More so a comment, and Joe, the thing that keeps you up at night keeps me up at night as well. I'm sure a lot of other presidents as well. And I think part of what we need is just better partnership between students and the administration on our campuses for that messaging. That's been a frustration at College Park, at least, is that we continue to try to partner on messaging and kind of keep getting left in the dust. But at the same time, I'm hoping the system can push our campuses leaders to make some of those harder decisions that I think we need. One thing at College Park, for example, is the student leaders, we very much welcome a sequester. Again, just like we had, unfortunately, last week, a week and a half ago, the week that we come back from spring break. We've said that in meetings with top leadership on the campus, and the messaging that comes out is similar to the sequester that we had, but they're not using the same communication. And so I think communication across all of our schools, obviously individual to each institution, what it looks like at each individual institution is important, because I think it sends the wrong message to students when you say 1 week it's a sequester and it means stay in your room, and then the next time you're just saying it's just online classes but stay in your room. It's basically the same thing, but we should use the same language. But I think we just need more of those hard decisions made by our administrators. That obviously keeps people safe on campus, but also helps create a baseline for the future, because I think that's part of the issue as well, is like, we'll have students come back from spring break. I saw the other day, Miami is having those normal MTV looking, concerts or whatever they do down in Miami on spring break. And we know our students are going there, but it's important to set that baseline when we come back of what is that positivity rate that first week, when everything else is kind of held stable. So that way we can determine what to do the second half. So anyway, the system can help kind of push, 1, partner with students more, and 2, we need to make some of those hard institution-wide decisions. And I think our student leaders would be in support of that, to keep students, faculty, and staff and neighbors safe as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate that. And I would also like to give a shout out to the students in general for buying in, if you will, to the much more assertive testing processes that we have. We are doing between 15 and 20,000 tests a week across the system, and the students have been terrific in showing up when they're supposed to, getting the tests, and we're trying to make it as convenient, or at least as less as, we're trying to not make it onerous in any way, but it's been working so far, so good. So we want to thank everybody for that.
Thank you so much, Dan, for those comments. Thank you, Joe, for those updates, and everybody for all your updates across the board. And I'll do a quick little further push for comms. As you see things coming out from Niv's side, please do continue to share and like and follow and send what she asks you, because she can't wait to celebrate you. And when she celebrates you, you can further use that and share that, and hopefully can be beneficial for you all as well individually. With that, I believe I hope I'm pronouncing Huron right. The Huron Consulting Group is here, and I can't wait to hear what they have in store for us. So I will go ahead and hand it over to them and thank them for their time with us today.
Well, I will just start with a couple of words to welcome Brenna and Thomas from Huron, and Anthony Foster, who is our colleague from the system office, is on the screen somewhere and is helping lead this charge too. So we thank them for their engagement. They have been making the rounds, and I think this may be towards the end of the list. They meet with the Vice Presidents for Student Affairs later this week. But this is an important engagement. So we hope you would encourage you to turn on your cameras, please, if they're working, to engage in a conversation. We sent you those questions. Hopefully you got a chance to take a look at them. And our consultants will say a little bit more about their background. But this is helpful to the system so that the strategic plan that's developed reflects some of the things that are concerns to you that you're dealing with on campus, what's best for students, and everything you say here is able to be woven into that process. So thank you for active engagement. Brenna, Thomas?
Thank you so much, Sakia, for the opening remarks. And we are so excited to be with you all this morning and to have this conversation. I'll start with just a brief introduction of Huron Consulting Group and who we are, and give an introduction of myself. And then I'll pass it to my colleague, Thomas, who he goes by Tommy, and Tommy will give an introduction of himself, as well as a little background on our strategic planning project, and then we will dive into our questions. So in terms of Huron, we are actually the largest consulting firm that has a practice specifically dedicated to higher education. So we have over 700 professionals that are working in the higher education industry exclusively. We've worked at all 100 of the top 100 research universities, and we do consulting projects across the gamut. So we do projects like this one, which is strategic planning, but also technology implementations. We help with the research enterprise. We do student enrollment type projects as well. In terms of who I am a manager in our higher education strategy and operations practice. I have been at Huron for 7 years. I am based in Chicago, which is actually where our headquarters are. And I focus my work on strategy projects, so strategy, growth, and new university planning. I actually have been on a project as well for the past 2 years for a university in Saudi Arabia, helping them launch a new college of medicine, which has been very exciting. I've worked on a strategic planning project a couple years back at University of Maryland College Park. And then have worked on a few system projects as well last year at the University of Wisconsin system. I completed my MBA at the University of Cambridge in England, and my focus area there was on social innovation and diversity and inclusion, which I know has been a major theme that has been raised here and is near and dear to the hearts of University of Maryland full stakeholder group, including you all. So we're excited to hear more about that from you as well. And that's pretty much it. So I will hand it over to Tommy to introduce himself and then provide a little background on our actual strategic planning project. Tommy?
Yeah, thank you, Brenna. So my name is Tommy. I'm an analyst within Huron's higher education strategy and operations practice. I just joined the firm last year after completing a master's degree at Boston College. I've predominantly focused on strategy as well in the months that I've been with the firm. I've worked on 3 kind of distinct projects up to this point, and predominantly have done kind of looking at internal institutional data and drawing some conclusions from that, in addition to doing external market research just to get a sense of what trends may be impacting higher education going forward and how institutions can be responsive and proactive in dealing with some of those trends. So those have been my two predominant focuses with the firm thus far. And so then to lead into specifically this project with the system-wide strategic plan, what we've been doing up to this point is connecting with a variety of internal community members within the university system, like you all. So we've met with leadership from each of the individual institutions, from the system office, and then we've met with some working groups as well as it relates to workforce development, economic development, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've really tried to garner a variety of perspectives that will inform the way that we interact with the Board of Regents, as well as ultimately craft the plan ultimately. So this phase of the project, we've really focused on internal data, stakeholders within the system, and we're kind of wrapping this phase up, and we're going to be moving on starting next month, starting kind of next week, next 2 weeks, talking to people outside of the university. So it could be people within government, could be business leaders that have a vested interest in the success of the system, as well as looking at some of those market trends that I had touched on earlier. So I guess without further ado, we can get into the questions. I hope that you all have spent maybe a little time looking at the questions. So hopefully that brought some things to the top of your mind. The way that I want to go through this is just kind of straight down the list. I'll pose the question. I'll also put it in the chat so you can refer back to it. And what I would love to see is some dialogue kind of come up between you all. Tangents are great. I'll try to interject with any kind of clarifying questions or redirect if need be, but we really just want to make sure that we're predominantly listening now. And so to the extent that you can build off of each other, that would be really great. So the first question is, what do you think are some of the key motivators that lead prospective students to apply and enroll at your institution? And then what do you see as being distinctive about your institution now that you've spent some time on campus?
I think for College Park, we are now part of the Big Ten, and I think that brings some weight as well. I think some students want to be part of a Big Ten university and shared in that academic, but also the athletic environment that brings. It's also a bigger school, and so a lot of students, I think, in the state and even out of state, we have a lot of New York and New Jersey kids, but want to attend a large state school that has that spirit, but also has the academic side. Also, I'm not going to necessarily speak for our grad students, Dan, Laff, and Ken, but we're a research institution as well, and I think that's very appealing to probably our graduate students and professors as well that want to come work and study at our institution.
Yeah, this is Arsalan. I also go to College Park, and I completely agree with what Dan said. I think being part of the Big Ten, I think that kind of gives you a lot of resources. And I see that not only at College Park, but also in other colleges like UMBC and a few others that have those, resources. I think that's the biggest one. And I think another one is, and I'm not sure if this is the best thing, but also name recognition. UMD because it is, or UMDCP because it is the flagship university of Maryland. That does add a little bit of weight. UMBC as well, a little bit, that does play a little bit in. But for those that are a little bit less known, I think people prefer to attend a university where somebody can look and say, oh, you went to College Park, and I automatically know the level of integrity and the level of standards that are associated with that university, as opposed to another, maybe a small private university that does not have that same level of recognition. Even if it may have the same level, if not higher level of standards and integrity.
Hi, this is Ashley from UMGC. I just wanted to add that I think UMGC attracts students because we're accessible, like the platform that we use to, like the school environment, the online learning environment is accessible to a lot of different types that may not be accessible in in-person learning. And also we attract a lot of non-traditional students. And I think that our reputation in like tech and our students that do transition into federal jobs with a lot of the agencies that are tech driven speak for itself. So yeah. And I think a lot of us, the type of training that we get in our education makes us ready for the job on day one.
And if there's another thing that I can add, and this is, I think, goes across USM schools, not just College Park. And I think that's our relatively low tuition fees. I know, we kind of go back and forth with the USM Central about tuition and student fees. And those are great and important conversations to have. But I think when you're looking at schools across the country, states in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition, we are relatively on the lower end of that scale. So I think that's also another incentive for not only in-state applicants, but also out-of-state applicants, and again, across the USM schools.
I can add something. I'm a graduate student at University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, and we are a little bit different as we are a research center. We only have graduate students. We only have about 90 graduate students. And I think what attracts students to UMCs is the reputation of UMCs, the reputation of the science, the faculty, the type of research that faculty are doing, attracts different types of students. And then the funding. So most of our graduate students are graduate research assistants. So how much funding each faculty or each lab has is a big key motivators, I think.
I think in the case of Salisbury University, obviously location is one, being about an hour from the beach, but also the quality of education, as well as the ability to get financial aid is something that really interests students when they come. I think it's definitely a really great campus when you actually come there and experience the family environment that's there. I think that's something that really, and I can probably say that about a lot of the USM institutions is the quality of education. And like Arsalan said, in terms of tuition, in-state tuition is really, really good in terms of the USM across the board.
So for Bowie State University, we're the oldest HBCU in Maryland. And we've consistently been expanding the academics while really empowering our students through entrepreneurship. We have a new entrepreneurship academy that's coming, a new building, and really connecting with the diversity and the particular needs of the population and student body.
Would anyone else like to kind of add a perspective before we move on? Okay, so the second question, in recognizing that each of you have had a different experience, and especially with UMGC, there may be a different interpretation on this question, but so the second question, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted higher education in multiple ways and has had the effect of exacerbating other challenges. And so we're wondering what aspects of the academic environment before the pandemic you have missed the most, and what pre-existing challenges at your institutions have been more clearly revealed by the pandemic.
I think this goes across the board, but there's definitely inequities within each of our campuses. And I think the pandemic has shown that, especially in relation to access to technology and also just PPE, essentially. I mean, one thing I was talking about yesterday with a school of public health professor is that, now that there's better messaging out in terms of what masks to wear, a lot of us are still wearing cloth masks because that was what was provided by the institution. But now with, the variants and stuff, we know that we need, even if they're disposable, higher end masks to double layer with. And for those students that have the access and money for that, to continue to buy those, right? They are therefore safer and better protected than students that aren't. So I think that's definitely, an inequity that we've shown. I think a lot of campuses have also adjusted to some of these inequities. I know at College Park, our IT department did a very good job at making sure students had hotspots and laptops and just even professors had webcams and things like that. And so, but I think the inequities in higher education were definitely showcased as a result of the pandemic. And in terms of what I missed the most, I'm a business student, and so we have a lot of group presentations and a lot of like consulting projects. And I like really miss kind of like walking into class that last day, you know, like all in our suits presenting to our clients, and that feeling when you're just like done with a project and being able to like go into the hallway after and kind of just take that big sigh of relief that you're done, and kind of just celebrate with your team that you know, delivered your final deliverable. Now we just kind of wear, you know, top half professional, and you turn off your camera at the end of class and you're done with class. And I think this also goes across a lot of things, but I miss learning kind of. Like I don't really feel like I've learned a lot this year, and I know a lot of students have told me the same. And it kind of sucks that you like don't have that feeling of like you did something and you learned something. It's kind of just like, well, I just had to take this class and I turned it in, and that's kind of it.
I'd like to agree with Dan. Especially at Bowie, we've certainly experienced a lot more of the disparity, people having access and things like that. And while our university absolutely has, you know, come forth with that initiative to provide students with those, the amount of students that need that is alarming. The amount of mental health services that are needed is alarming. People not being able to afford basic necessities and having to take out student loans for those basic necessities has certainly become something that we're talking about more, and I hope in the future we can address that. Being a student leader, I certainly miss our monthly meetings and coming together and sharing a meal. You know, I'm an extrovert, and not having that connection with my classmates is very hard. Another inequity that I'm sure others have seen is just a skill inequity of, I don't know how many other graduate assistants have to consistently help their professor during class on how to run the class. But I'm getting kind of tired of doing that while thankfully sitting in my pajamas, but at least I'm comfortable while I'm doing it.
And along with Liberty said, because I'm also a student at Bowie, most professors, from what we've seen, I don't know if there's just not enough training to train them on how to use certain technologies, but because of that, it makes it hard for us to learn or grasp concepts, and then we get punished if we can't grasp because they can't teach. And like, I'm a biology major, so I'm taking 4 sciences this semester, and like 3 out of the 4 of my professors don't know how to use our technology. So then grades plummet for the class. And then we all get affected. So, yeah.
I want to see if I can add something real quick. Where I put my notes here. In terms of challenges exposed, I would say certainly the ability to respond and adapt to student needs, right, across the board, whatever that looks like, has certainly been exposed, and the lack thereof, as well as just supporting students that may need any sort of support, whether it's mental health resources or other sort of special arrangements, especially for our non-traditional students, but even more so for traditional students who have had to make major adjustments this year. And with that, you know, there's been a lot of presumptions, I guess, across the institutions, and just sort of thinking or expecting that students can just handle whatever is thrown at them. I think that's been exposed as a bad presumption. And so that's kind of what I wanted to add to the conversation. I see a lot of heads nodding, so I'm sure others will chime in.
Would anyone who put something in the chat like to kind of expand on what they put there?
Oh, I just mentioned like juggling unrelated things. So, you know, I'm used to going to school online and like kind of like working on my own, but now that everything's online, like everything's in Zoom, I've been working from home like any type of, I don't know, all types of things are online that I wasn't expecting to be online because everybody's kind of like adjusting. Yeah, so that part of it's been difficult. And I think that's like tied to the mental health because like, yeah, what I said in the chat about Zoom fatigue is very real.
The only thing I would, it builds upon what so many have said, but something I've been hearing when I go to different campuses and I visit their assemblies or I have one-on-one conversations with student leaders is it speaks again to that disparity, but we're noticing and becoming a lot more acutely aware of students for the first time being diagnosed with certain learning differences and not knowing what resources are there. And this is a tougher environment to try to navigate that and learn that while all these other things that have been mentioned are going on. So that continues to be a struggle as well.
This has been all like very, very helpful so far. So thank you all for your participation. With the next questions now, we're gonna kind of transition a bit from the student experience and thinking about kind of immediate impacts on the student experience to some larger system level questions. And so this next question is, to what extent do students on individual campuses know that their campus is associated with the larger university system of Maryland? How does this affiliation affect the student experience, if at all? What do you believe to be the role of the system in general? And where are there opportunities for increased collaboration between institutions within the system?
I'm going to get the ball rolling in case it makes people feel more comfortable to open up about this. They don't. Most people don't know about the university system on their campus. And you don't learn until you're a student leader, and you learn you need to come to these meetings if you're the president of an SGA or a GSA. Unless you're that, or you're really proactive and you learn about the student regent process, you don't know. If people want to tell me I'm wrong, feel free to, but I just wanted to say it first because I know like so it makes it more okay for others to say it too.
I totally agree with what Amy said. Most folks on our campuses do not know about the USM or the USM Student Council. I think, but to your other point as well, how does the affiliation affect students' experience, if at all? I think it does affect it to a large degree. And we talked about the tuition, right? Because the USM as a whole has been pushing for lower tuition across their campuses. That has helped, but I don't think a lot of folks understand that across the campuses. They don't really know the association between USM and what USM has been doing. The USM Student Council has been doing, whether they be the various projects that we've been pursuing to help students with their issues across campuses. So I think we do help and we do play a slight of a role, a pretty big role in students across campuses, but I don't think that's necessarily directly known or associated across the campuses.
Hi, this is Ashley from UMGC. I think I've always been conscious of it even before I got involved, because that was kind of one of the selling points for me, because I did look at other university like curriculum and like what their schedules would look like. So UMGC was like the best fit, and it was kind of better than looking at any other type of online learning, because it was like, I think, more valuable because it was associated. Yeah, so that was like definitely a selling point. And the fact that it would cost the same thing as going to a community college, which is more like adaptable to non-traditional students, but having everything online and it being associated with USM was definitely a selling point.
I think additionally, this is Dan Laffin, UMCP, GSG. There's a disconnect of knowing which institutions are a part of it, if you know it exists at all. I think the institutions whose name kind of follows the model, University of Maryland blank, you kind of associate those together, UMCP, Baltimore, Eastern Shore. But you maybe don't connect that a Towson is a part of it or whoever. So I would agree with Annie and with a lot here that the vast majority of students just don't know about the system at all. And then there's still some that do, but don't actually know the full reach of it as well.
To the second part of the question, where is there opportunities for collaboration? I think there's kind of like the USMSC model, but there's an opportunity for groups, people, or positions of similar types at each of the institutions to come together specifically to collaborate on those topics that are, or areas of interest. And that could, instead of coming to USMSC and then branching out from there where we try to connect everybody, there's an opportunity there to make those direct connections across different institutions.
To touch on the second few, second bunch of questions that you have in that one, I think it's a really interesting model. I think from a student leader perspective, sometimes having the system is really frustrating because it's a lot of, and I know Jerry, you're laughing, but it's true. Like the resources we get are incredible. Like it really is. And I think from the research side of things, it probably helps so much. Also from the fundraising and donor relations, I'm sure it helps an incredible amount. But the schools will a lot of times point fingers at the system and Board of Regents and say, we can't do it because of them. And then the Board of Regents and system will turn around and say, well, we want individual decisions made at institution levels. And so sometimes it's really frustrating going back and forth because, to be honest, like it's just a lot of finger pointing. And I think it's just because there's different things that are handled on the system level and Board of Regents side versus on the institution level. But that's definitely something I think, I said this last time when we talked about you all coming, I think it's just like, this idea of straddling. I think the system kind of straddles between being like the overarching say for institutions versus wanting to be a little bit more decentralized and help with that research side. And so I think kind of just from like a mission standpoint, clearly defining like the position of USM would be helpful to kind of reduce that straddle.
Dan, could you give a few examples of times when it seems like there's been some like finger pointing, like what would be like the buckets of decisions that, you know, sometimes it seems as though they're made at the campus level, but then maybe they're made at the system level and there's kind of that back and forth of not knowing. Yeah, so to my understanding, so actually I'll give a good example for something that I care a lot about, and that's fees. In the summer, I think, or maybe it was early in the fall, to my understanding, the chancellor wanted us to kind of move together on fees and kind of make an announcement together rather than the individual institutions kind of making that. But now a lot of the conversation is, well, fees are still up to the individual institutions. And then when you look at the setup of a lot of different things, to my understanding, it's when professors get different statuses or even student fees, everything's kind of advisory. And so it all kind of goes up to the Board of Regents to make final decisions. But at the same time, it really weakens the power of students and also just of like what a campus does. And so I think at times it's very much, when does the Board of Regents and system want to have power and when do they rather just kind of defer down in a sense? I know it also deals with accreditation. And I know that because of College Park and what happened here when our football team had a player die during practice. And to my understanding, the Board of Regents essentially told President Lowe at the time, you know, if you fire DJ Durkin, we'll fire you. And then obviously we then had our accreditation in danger because the Board of Regents stepped into something they shouldn't have. At least that's my understanding of the accreditation and that whole situation. I was a sophomore. So I think there's a lot of instances like that. Yeah, fees I know are pretty much one of the, for student related, is one of the bigger ones where like everything's advisory. So it just keeps going up. And so the schools can easily just say, well, you know, the system and Board of Regents make the final decision. But at the end of the day, the system and Board of Regents will kind of point down to the individual institutions. I think we also have another unique one with the new naming policy that the Board of Regents passed in the fall. I think that was a naming policy that a lot of students appreciated. I know at College Park, we're already utilizing it. And I've already communicated that to our president that we're going to be going through the process. But it's a process that, again, has to be approved by the Board of Regents, even though it affects an individual institution. And so I'm sure there's reasons for everything. I mean, there obviously is, but I think a lot of times it really is
just kind of like up in the air on who's actually the authority decision maker in the situation, and when do they want to be.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that context, Dan. And I see some people in the chat are agreeing with some of your comments. Would anyone like to kind of share their perspective on this topic? Would anyone else like to expand on, there were 2 points that were raised earlier. I think it might have been, I forget now, but someone raised the point of online learning and maybe that there was some value in being associated with the system in regards to online learning. I don't know if anyone could expand on that point. And then in regards to the tuition, I think that was raised a few times, that maybe affiliation with the system has some tuition benefits. Would anyone like to expand on either of those two?
I think that having institutions in our system that are primarily and were primarily online probably gave us a head start and I guess a bigger step than maybe other systems, because we were able to collaborate and speak with those leaders to see what the best way to transition would be. So I think that may have been very, very beneficial, especially at the beginning when everyone was trying to get transitioned into this virtual environment and nobody really had a clue of what was going on.
And also one of the, talking about the online aspect of it, when making a decision between the different primarily online universities like Phoenix and I think it's like Southern New Hampshire University and some of those types of colleges, having UMGC be part of that University of Maryland system and knowing that there's that bigger support and kind of that maybe brand name recognition, if anything else, and is also part of it as well.
From a tuition standpoint, one thing that's really nice is our institutional enrollment. That's something that I know, like I said, I'm in the business school. We take advantage of a lot. It's kind of known at College Park that like accounting and finance aren't the best courses to take at College Park. So I enjoyed being able to utilize not having to pay more and just incorporating my own tuition, taking a course at another institution. And that was really valuable, and I appreciated that a lot.
The only thing I would just add as a side note, in terms of collaboration, it'd be great to see the system sort of bring everyone together to maybe do a better job of highlighting our HBCUs and the role that they play in our system. Oftentimes they do feel that they are being underserved. And so if there's a way to kind of fill that gap, and again, to just show the importance and the significance of having them a part of the system, I think that would go a long way as well.
Are there any other last thoughts before we move on to, I'm going to combine the last two questions because they're similar, but just want to make sure, because this is, when we're working with at a system level, you know, this is a really important question as to the role of each institution and potential points of collaboration, and then just distinguishing kind of responsibility and authority. So this has been great. So I want to make sure that if other people are holding their peace, that they shouldn't, because this is really important.
I hope the folks from this school don't mind me asking them specifically to speak up, but I've heard such interesting things from visits and one-on-one calls from Shady Grove, which I think you all are extremely unique in that you have all these universities and you're getting the degree and it's this. So if any of you want to like just chime in and say the viewpoint of how Shady Grove feels about how they're a part of the system, and if you could just shed light on that, I think it would be really beneficial. And I see some of you are here, so.
Yeah, I can jump in there. Tiffany Flowers, the student council president at Shady Grove. And yeah, our setup is just very different. Sometimes we say it's a pro and sometimes we say it's a con, because whenever we have issues or stuff that goes on at our school, we're always directed to go back to our main campus. So we understand at Shady Grove that we are part of the USM system, but we don't know how to make changes at our particular campus because they always direct us to our home campus.
And what kind of, Tiffany, thanks for that. What kind of changes are you referring to? That
just like anything with like our tuition fees, because we pay student fees at Shady Grove. We have a say-so in that. We recently just had a meeting and we looked over the student fees of what we pay at Shady Grove, but then we don't have a say-so over like our tuition or the professors or some of our curriculum or just anything. We don't really have a say-so in those things.
And what would you say, Tiffany, or maybe others at Shady Grove? You mentioned, Tiffany, since sometimes your setup is seen as a pro and sometimes it's seen as a con. And maybe this kind of decision-making authority could be one of the cons. But what would be the pros?
The pros is just seeing students from all 9 universities at one campus. That has been very beneficial because you get to see how different schools are ran. So that comparison piece, you know, is very beneficial for our students at USG. Like I've come in contact with the University of Maryland students, and I'm a Towson student. So, you know, we get to see, we do have Bowie State for the grad program. So I get to come in contact. I see a lot of UMGC students. So we really compare how our campuses or our institutions are being ran. And I think that that's why that comparison makes us want to bring those things back to our home universities, but it's really hard to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really great. And so in the interest of time, I think we should transition to the last set of questions now, which is that through our stakeholder engagement and data analysis to date, we've learned about a variety of progress that the University System of Maryland has made on a number of different priorities, ranging from diversity and inclusion to undergraduate enrollment to economic impact and community service. And so we're wondering, which of these priorities do you see as strengths, which should be kind of carried forward in the plan? What are some new areas that should be prioritized going forward? And then relatedly, just to have you all thinking about kind of bigger picture and storytelling, is what kind of stories will it be important to tell about both your institution specifically and the system in general 10 years from now?
So I think, so all those I agree are strengths of our system. What we've been talking about a lot at College Park is how do we combine the different things that we're looking at and look at it holistically. So what I mean by this is, for example, economic impact, huge thing at College Park. Like we are doing a good job with College Park and with Prince George's County as we continue to develop. 2 things we need to be careful of is how does that impact diversity and inclusion with gentrification of a historically Hispanic and Black community in College Park? And how do we look at sustainable development in our city where we don't have that much more land to build on in my eyes? And so like, how do we build on places that are sustainable and don't hurt the greater environment? And so I think that I think we need to start looking at how do we look at all these long-term goals kind of holistically and how they impact one another.
I am going to put emphasis on workforce development, especially dealing with COVID right now. And even, hearing Dan say earlier, many students don't feel as though they have learned a lot this year because of all the changes and transitions. So it's going to be even more important going forward to make sure students are prepared to enter the workforce upon completing their degree programs or during.
Oh, I mentioned in the comments about accessibility. So I think that it can be kind of like a positive spin in a way, because I think a lot of employers, like from what I'm seeing, are going to maybe not all of them, of course, but some are planning on transitioning to a remote option that they didn't have before, even once COVID's over. So I think that's kind of interesting. So yeah, like the university is adapting to that, but also maintaining a little bit of that once we do go back to normal. I think maintaining the opportunity for people to get involved that weren't involved before, because I do think that some people have been able to engage where before they may not have been because it would have been in person. I've talked to a couple people that are now interested in pursuing things or getting involved with things that they didn't before because they did have social anxiety. So having a virtual situation is actually better for the way that they operate. And for me, having dyslexia, having an online platform is more in line with the way that I learn. So, there is an element of people being brought in that may have had challenges in the traditional format.
So two areas that have come up through our engagement so far that I'd kind of love to get your reaction to is, and related to, I think, the workforce development piece and kind of just the learning piece and the impact of the pandemic on learning outcomes, but is how the pandemic is going to affect or has affected K through 12 education, and if there's any role for the system to play in terms of college readiness and just interaction with K through 12 going forward. And then relatedly, kind of moving towards a more personalized learning, which I think can relate to accessibility and being able to learn in a way that's personalized, but also, with other people. And I'd be curious if, those two impacts of COVID and kind of the role the system might be able to play in those areas, how you think about those as priorities going forward.
Because that would fall under diversity and inclusion, right? Sorry, I don't know if that's I just want to make sure I understand the question.
I guess the question, it could, to the extent that there are, underlying conditions or inequities that exacerbate these things. I think it's, my thinking was more so on the role that the system can play within the state, kind of with the first part of the question in K-12, and then the role of the system in kind of driving learning outcomes that are aligned with individual learning styles, desires, et cetera. Does that reframing help?
Yeah. I think just having options, like I said before, even if everybody goes back to normal, just having that option there, I think you bring people to the table that that wouldn't have been an option for them personally. Because I even know a couple people whose kids are actually thriving in the online environment versus the in school. Of course, it's a small group, but just having, I think, a variety, like you said, a variety of options and learning styles, having that available so that they can choose like what's best for them.
I agree with you because a lot of people from what I've been seeing, not just at Bowie State, but at other universities and at other schools, some people do better when they're learning face-to-face if they have the option, and other people are doing better online. So that option would be really good in the future if we ever get to go back to normal.
I have two thoughts. One's something that I think is already happening well, and I hope continues to be supported, which is one of the groups at USM Central that we've worked the best with throughout the year from the summer through now is the P20 office, specifically with civic engagement and civic education. And I think that's a great thing that crosses over the earlier grades before you reach college. So I hope that that continues to be supported. And I know that the whole council has just loved Dr. Shapiro, and every time she comes and helps us promote those things on our individual campuses. The other piece is, and this one I'm a little bit more murky on myself, but it feels like it needs to be said and is important, is, and if this doesn't apply to Maryland, tell me I'm way off, but I come from a state where you could graduate from high school and not have the requirements you need to go to the land grant institution of that state, that you would actually be sent back for remedial education. So just making sure those gaps don't exist, making sure there's support systems for community college to four-year institution transfer and those things, I think that seems to me to be like in the USM's best interest. But if I'm way off base to say that that's that's a thing, then I apologize. But it just seems like really important, and transfer students are a really large population, I think, across the system.
Annie, are you talking about doing something like dual enrollment? Because we do that, at least in PG.
Yeah, sometimes it can be dual enrollment. Sometimes it's a matter of having something called articulation agreements. So even if there isn't a dual enrollment option, knowing that your credits will be accepted from point A to point B in your same state, so that you don't get set back financially and through time, which is so valuable to all of us. So anything that helps those kinds of operations and logistics that makes, in essence, education more accessible and affordable for all. If you don't have to keep repeating classes or don't have to go back for remedial work, you don't have to get sent back at any point when you're trying to go to stuff in the state. But I do realize that not every Maryland institution is in USM. So I don't know.
Annie,
I agree with you. I think that would be really useful.
I think that also relates obviously to the transfer credit bill that we all are supporting, I believe, in the Maryland General Assembly. It's just like, if you are at one institution within the state, how can we ensure that the credit transfers over to another institution, or at least within the system, and kind of make that process a little bit more clear so that people aren't set back. I'd also say, I think it goes back a little bit to what I was saying and thinking like holistically, like when we are doing great things for our community and for our schools, how do we help those in our community as well? Something we talk a lot about in the College Park community within the city council, and even our student government has been talking about a lot, is like this idea of like the College Park pipeline. How do we ensure that students in Prince George's County have the opportunity to go to the university, and how do we as a university help support primary and secondary education in the county as well? And so we have the College Park Academy now, which the city loves. That's not necessarily part of the University of Maryland, but it allows us to, it can allow us to create a better partnership to help bring in students from the area as well into our institution. So I think it just goes back to, as we continue to develop, as we continue to grow as schools in our own respective cities, how do we, even if we don't have a literal responsibility, just the moral responsibility of helping those around us grow with us, I think is important.
Exactly. And before I forget, one of our student regent people who came and interviewed with all us, he brought up one piece of this, which I thought was also key. His family had immigrated here from Nigeria, and helping those who are coming from other countries, having those credits and things not all be lost too. He was talking about something around the system that would help immigrants and those coming from other systems not have to start from scratch. So it's another kind of transfer, right? But helping people in transition.
Yeah, and I would add, in terms of outreach and connecting to K-12 students, flexibility, right, which some of y'all have mentioned, whether that's COVID safety, making sure they know they're going to feel safe coming to our institutions, test options. So there's been a lot of changes on that front and a lot of waivers and the requirements have changed at a lot of schools across the country. So making sure that that is transparent and apparent to K-12 students and flexibility. So students who may not be ready to come to campus just yet or things like that, showing that we can continue to meet student needs and that we have adequate resources across the system. I think amplification as a system goes a long way and is more beneficial right now if we can kind of market the system as a whole to the extent possible, because there's a broader set of resources as a whole. Someone mentioned community engagement. I think that's critical as well, because there are several programs, whether it's dual enrollment or UMGC cyber program, or just transfer options. There's a lot of programs that our K through 12 students aren't aware of. And I was a part of one event where we brought about 4 USM schools together on one call, and we brought their recruitment and enrollment senior leadership. And I heard about so many programs that I had never heard about before. It was College Park, UMGC, Bowie, and one other one. And we did that last fall and opened that up to PG County students. But things like that, that's open to all students across the state to come and hear directly from the institutions and what it looks like to come here in that process, I think would go a long way.
Great. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 last comments.
One question I saw pop up is, are you all planning at different stages of your process to meet with students? Is this the one time you're meeting with students? Like, what's your student participation plan as you continue with your strategy?
Yeah, thanks for raising that. I think we do think of this kind of part of the project as being the kickoff to the stakeholder engagement. So we'll be working with Zakia to figure out when it would make sense to kind of come back and have a conversation that would be more focused on like testing of ideas. This one is more kind of everything under the sun, getting kind of everyone's perspective on what's top of mind. But then once we have some ideas of some actual strategic options that are potentials for the strategic plan, I think it would be great to have another conversation where we could kind of test these with you all.
Hi, Brenna, this is Anthony and group. Thank you for this. I just wanted to mention also that Regent Sansom, the student region, is part of the board's steering group for the strategic plan. So, you know, he's also helping us with this system. And we're also looking at ways that not just students, but faculty and staff and others can engage and submit ideas through our website. So we'll have an open forum so people can submit ideas as well. So we're trying to make it so that we have multiple ways to engage with the plan.
Going off of that, I think Nate, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you, Anthony. I was going to mention that as well. And as you know, I'm always at all of your meetings here. So I'd be happy to bring back any suggestions that we may not get to today, but that come, you know, either in later meetings or just when you're not in the meeting. If you want to text or email me, I'd be happy to keep a running list for our next strategic planning meeting, which is actually going to be on the 11th. And so we can just remain in constant communication there. So thank you for mentioning that, Anthony.
Sure. Thank you, Regent.
The one thing I want to mention is, you know, obviously there's a lot of stakeholders in the system, but I think because it's higher education, students are an extremely important stakeholder. And so ensuring that there's, you know, as much as we obviously appreciate Nate, having more than one student in the room is beneficial. And I think Chancellor Perman presents that opportunity because he meets with so many different students that are in specific bubbles, I think are helpful. And so I think how do we utilize those groups that Chancellor Perman brings together to get their ideas is important, because it's a lot more diverse than this group, and they have a lot more thoughts as well than this group, I think, in specific areas is important, and continuing to work with students across different areas, because yes, the general view is nice, but at the end of the day, I think we have a lot of excellent students that are really great thought leaders in specific areas, whether that's D&I or, you know, city relations or whatever it may be. And so I think making sure we have more of those is important.
Thank you, Dan.
I just wanted to open up again, not to put anybody particularly on the spot, but there are a few schools that we haven't heard from throughout this conversation. So Frostburg, Coppin, Towson, or Eastern Shore. Do you have anything you want to share while we have this time with the consultants?
I pretty much agreed with everything that's been said thus far. If there's one thing that I think I might have wanted to add a little bit more on, is something that I wanted to say specifically about our connection with USM. I think that because of Tiger Pride Day and that being something that we do annually, a lot of our students, especially like political science majors and things like that, students who have involvement in it outside of Student Government Association, have an understanding of USM and the magnitude of our bills and things like that that we do. And that's something that I think was a good idea to kind of place as a consistent thing to do to kind of engage with the student body. So yeah, that was just one thing that I wanted to. I think it would be beneficial to continue doing it because it's important to our institution and to our connection with the USM. And it just kind of helps the relationship ongoing.
Could you just briefly tell us what the Tiger Pride Day, what's involved with that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, like not everyone here would know what that means. So basically it's an annual event where we go to Annapolis and we lobby for 5 specific bills that are voted on by the Student Senate on behalf of the student body to support, that are meant to support our students, support college students in general, campus life, things like that, or just matters that we find important to college students in general.
Well, cool. I don't know if we're going to hear from Frostburg, Coppin, or Eastern Shore, but I do know that Coppin's like the happiest school I've ever talked to. So everybody at Coppin seems really happy. So if you get to talk to Coppin or go of all of those, but if any of the 3 of you want to chime in, I know you always have like really good things to say. If not, feel free to. Are there ways that we can keep a channel of communication open with you all for later, in addition to Nate always coming to our meetings, but any other channels?
Go ahead, Anthony.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we can obviously, as much as you want to communicate, if there are different ideas, if there are thoughts, things you would say, as Regent Sansom said, I think you can communicate directly with him. He's part of the steering group. They'll be working on these issues at the highest level with the board. Zakia and obviously Dr. Boffman are great, but you can also write directly to me, Anthony Foster. I'm at USMD, and we'll all keep kind of the information flowing. I think, as probably Brenna and Tommy mentioned, this is a year-long effort. So we're going through stakeholder engagement at this process. We'll continue it through the summer. We'll come back in the fall, having these conversations and continuing to discuss. And ideally, if everything goes smoothly, we would love to have a draft plan in the fall, and then have a plan for the board, present to the board at the end of the fall semester. Really, December is kind of our time frame. So we'll keep the conversations ongoing.
Excellent. I have one quick question since you said that timeline. Nate, does it stay you, or does it change to Aaliyah, or does it stay you?
So on that note, Annie, I need to chat with our office about that, because I'm on the steering committee, but it's not because I'm the student regent. It was simply because the office asked for regents to serve, and I was asked to serve in this capacity. And so it's not given that it's a student role, but I will certainly coordinate with the office, and we will make sure that that we've got some voice there. So don't worry, I will make sure of that when we do have the handoff, but I cannot answer that with any certainty right now, but great question.
Thank you. And thanks, Anthony.
Sure. Thank you, Annie.
Well, awesome. Well, I thank you so much for coming. Tommy and Brenna and Anthony. Truly. Feel free. Our next thing is a quick bio break, and then we're going into general forum. Feel free to stay until we live stream everything until breakout rooms anyway. So if you want to just hear what people are up to, you're welcome to stay. If you gotta go, you gotta go. totally understand.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for having us, or thank
Yeah,
you
well,
for coming.
from our standpoint, as Tommy mentioned, was a really, really helpful conversation. So we really appreciate everyone's contributions and your willingness to share. I think we've captured everything that was in the chat as well as what was said. And we look forward to meeting with you again sometime this year.
Great.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks you, everyone.
Right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
All right, everyone. Being mindful of time, we'll go ahead and have a break for those who need it. I know it's a shorter break than usual, but just a quick bio break so that we can still get out by 2. So reconvene in about 6 minutes at 12:40. I'll be around if anyone needs me in the interim, but see you in just a few.
Yeah, Annie, I just have a really quick question. Do you know how many institutions have voted for the hunger-free campus bill so far?
That one was an email one, right? It wasn't with the form.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
was just an email.
Email.
I
Let me
haven't
see.
gotten any responses. I think I got one from University of Baltimore, or UMB, I think, one of those two.
Yeah, let me check because sometimes folks.
Yeah, we have a meeting with the senator on Monday, so tomorrow. So I just want to go and I want to at least have some idea of how many people have supported it.
And you know what maybe we could do, I'll make sure it's okay with Zakia and Joe because it's a little bit different, but I think we have a transcript of the chat. So I wonder if I can just say, like, people who are here, can you throw in that, who are voting reps, can you throw in the chat real quick? Do you support it? But I don't know if that's too informal, if I should just ask them to email us real quick or.
I don't think it's, I mean, it's fine with me. I mean, as long as it's fine with, Zakia and it's, not breaking any laws or anything, any bylaws, it's fine with me.
Okay, and I'll check right now too to see if anybody emailed me separate.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now, so I see, I think a few.
I see Shady Grove because they're voting machines. University of Baltimore are the two that I see that have voted. Or is that the same two you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I only see one. Another question that I actually had. So what are we doing with those two folks that reached out to us? I think Julia and Brian and Alex, I think.
Yeah. So once we have those votes come in, I guess I would trust you and Yvonne and Drew and those of you on government relations to decide what's best. We can write our own written testimony again, or in addition to the letter that they asked us to sign on to. So Julia sent us what is her thing called? Hunger Solutions or something of that. Yeah, Maryland Hunger Solutions. They have a letter. So they basically said we could sign on to their letter or we could do our own.
Yeah, I mean, we're ready to sign on to their letters. We already have somebody testifying from our committee. Yeah, so we actually have two folks that have been working, Amisha and Rida. I don't know if you know those two folks. Rida actually goes to College Park, but she and Amisha both have been working on that bill. So yeah, they're testifying at least.
Cool.
Yeah, so they're planning on testifying. So obviously if we go on and support that bill, obviously, but yeah. So I think we can go ahead and once we get those votes, we'll go ahead and collaborate with them as well.
That sounds good.
Julia.
Yeah.
And actually, I will reach out to Julia probably today, because I think I've met her before actually, because I used to be part of the Maryland Hunger Solutions. So I will try to reach out to her and see what we can do with that.
Okay. This sounds like a plan, and I'll do I'll do a quick plug, see if people want to just quickly email us, because we have every school is actually on today, which is pretty cool. So if they just want to vote yes, they can. Oh yes, sorry.
Oh no, you can say out loud.
Okay.
I was just typing because
I was like, oh, I was about to answer that, and then I saw it was like direct. I was like, oh, whoa. Dr. Nancy Shapiro. So yeah, let me get you her her email. She runs the P through 20.
Yeah, because like I was saying with the dual enrollment, I did that in high school, and I just graduated from high school last year, and now I'm a college sophomore because of it. And that's part of the reason why I enrolled into a USM school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I already had the credit, and it was an easy transfer.
Many of the things you all suggested and said are in place. Some of that just tells me, though, that it's communication, it's advertising, it's trying to find ways to make sure you know these services are available, or student. I mean, you're here now, but younger students and connecting to K-12. But Annie's right, that's Dr. Shapiro's entire office is about making those connections with K-12.
I actually transferred from Prince George's Community College, and that was one of the things that they talked about was the articulation agreements. And there's a system called ArtSys. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of it, but that's where they have, you can plug in classes from any community college or any other university in Maryland, and it'll pop out the class that you that matches and that transfers over to any different school that you put in. So it's definitely a really, really good system that we have.
David, if we had an award for who knew the most random fact that usually sits in USM, you would win. But ArtSys is undergoing a big overhaul right now. It's a huge deal. So I'm glad we have an example of someone that it helps, but we recognize it's with the independents. It's a statewide database.
Well, you guys
Very
happen
important.
to know if there's a partnership between USM and the private K-12 schools? Because like I know a lot of students who are about to go to college and they're in private school, but they want to go to USM schools and they want to do the same programs as the public school kids get to do.
Well, I just know from having a kid at that age range, but there's dual enrollment opportunities for everyone.
Private school too?
Okay. Yeah.
Probably even homeschoolers, maybe. I don't know. Like,
I was just about to say, because y'all know that's my community. And they literally, it is for everyone. But we don't always know or feel like it is. And I think they're trying to do better. So I literally just this week got an email for an upcoming webinar around dual enrollment, and it's open to public, private, and homeschool students. So I signed up for that. So that was good to see.
Oh, that's perfect. Because my little sister, she's about to go to high school. She just got into Seton over here in Prince George's County. But my mom wants her to do dual enrollment like me so she can go to a USM school. Because she sees how great the system is, and she's like, you need to go to one of these schools. So,
yeah. That's such a good point. And I think that that's the main thing, right? Is like, if we make that link, I think people would think wonderful things. It's just, they just don't think about it. It just doesn't occur. Like, it just doesn't occur. I was super thrilled that one person had a counter. Ashley was able to be like, I knew about USM, and it was like one of my decisions. I was like, that is awesome. That is so cool. Somebody reached you, and that was awesome. How did you find, like, was that your own self-research, or did somebody do a great job letting you know about that, Ashley?
Well, I like Googled like universities in Maryland, and of course, like all the USM schools came up, and I was like, okay, I know what I want to go to school for. So I just like kind of picked out programs that were associated with each school, and I looked at like their format, like what their classes would look like, whether or not they had like online learning. Yeah, and it just happened that UMGC was a better fit and one of the cheapest ones in the systems, because I think their rates were the same as community college. So I was like, I could go to community college where there's a lot of non-traditional, or I could go to University of Maryland system school and have for the same price and have guess like that little, like, I don't know, like extra oomph.
I like it. No, it was awesome. I was glad somebody I was actually thrilled. Like, that's so cool. I'm just gonna check on here and make sure I don't forget anything before we kick things back off. Okay. Very good, very good. All right. So welcome back, everybody. We'll get started. Oh yeah.
Annie, sorry to jump in, but we just had a question from the chat saying it would be nice to know about some of these things, the relationships and so on. I just have to let you know that we have 852 articulation agreements between community colleges and USM, individual pathways from various community colleges into our four-year institutions. So we're kind of everywhere, and keeping up with all of those articulation agreements is a challenge, but we do our best.
Is there like, because I feel like this is such a good resource pool for USM Central for that like news to get out. Is there any kind of infographic or anything student leaders at their GSAs and SGAs could be like, hey, did you know? Like easy, like we couldn't have an 800 slide PowerPoint showing every single agreement. But
No.
Yeah.
No, Zakia, let's take that back to our group and so on, especially around the upgrade of ArtSys and all of the things that ArtSys will do. One of the major upgrades there is the student portal in ArtSys and what that will do for you. But as we make that turn, let's make sure we make a note of that.
So I do have a question though, in thinking this through, and I appreciate this conversation. One second, sorry. The articulation agreements and all of that communication usually goes down to the K-12 side. So tell me what you're thinking would be useful. How would that be useful to the SGAs and GSAs? You know, we're cognizant of email overload and too much information, but would it be that you all would then be able to spread it on behalf of the system too? Because you're already here, your constituents are already here. So tell me what you're thinking.
Oh, I was thinking more the community college transfer students at college level, to be honest. I was thinking of the people like our transfer and transfer and commuter students at College Park, which is like several thousand students, was what was actually on my brain. But also the conversation I had with, I've had a couple conversations with Kyle Deenan that weren't actually about the 5-year plan. They were about this, because this is like his top issue near and dear to his heart. I think he was a transfer student. So I think he would love to know more about this, or their student advisory too. But I was thinking about those articulations, but you are probably talking about the whole pipeline. That's cool though.
Good conversation.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, welcome back everybody. Hopefully everyone's back. We had about half of y'all that sent in campus reports, and there were some pretty interesting things on there. So I'm going to ask a few of you that sent in reports to share, and then if there's other things that those of you who didn't get a chance to do a report want to share going on at your campus, you are welcome to do so. And that can include like, hey, this is going on my campus, I don't know what to do, y'all help me, because you're like similar to me at your schools. One of them was if somebody from University of Baltimore wants to, we actually had this come up on a past campus report, but it's still an interesting thing, and I know people are interested in learning more about it. It looks like providing subscriptions to Grammarly is official now, and something that the university is doing for all the students. Do you all want to speak to that, or how you made that happen? And that can be Randy or April or Daniel or
Dan might be able to give more information on that, just because we're still in the process of rolling it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So what we did is we paid for 200 subscriptions for students to pilot it out to see how they like it. And throughout this semester, we are going to survey students and those who will be signing up for this service to see how they like it. And based on those surveys, we're going to give the school a recommendation and see how we can collaborate on making a permanent membership available for a greater amount of students. And we hope that we are going to find a pathway for SGA to be able to fund this. We have a lot of money that has gone into our reserves, and we think some of that can be repurposed to create a 3-year funding opportunity for this program for our students.
Very cool. That's neat. Because I forget what other campuses were interested in doing it too the last time it came up, but there were a couple. So it's neat to know that you all made it happen. You're going to do your pilot with 200 folks. So that's great. I have my notes on my phone from the campus highlights. So one sec, I'm looking down at that.
Annie.
Uh-huh.
I could just offer, since you're talking about this partnership, there's something similar that UMGC did with study.com that was announced in January. And I don't know that we shared it yet, but I'm going to pop a link in the chat so folks can see it.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Thank
I don't
you.
know the details, but it was, same thing, partnership
Very
with.
good. Yeah, very same thing to get like a service for students. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. We had a concern come up in one of the campus reports that was interesting, and I'm sure is a concern that's felt across more than just this institution. I know I've heard about it at College Park, for example. Would anyone from Bowie like to speak to the concern that you're hearing as student leaders about affording graduation costs?
I think it's just more of an ongoing conversation about the wealth disparity. We just had an influx of students this semester asking us for help with graduation as opposed to previous semesters. And we're trying to figure out why that is, if it's COVID related. I know each semester our CARES Act dollars are decreased because of the need, and the pool is smaller. So
Gotcha.
Ongoing.
Oh, wow. Is anybody else having that issue at your campuses, students coming to your SGAs or GSAs with concerns about paying for graduation robes or fees or I don't know what's going on with the virtual commencements, but those sorts of things?
Yeah. I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
No, David, go ahead.
I was going to say actually the exact opposite. SU has reduced the price of graduation regalia by half. So I believe it's because it's going to be mostly virtual, but we are going to have a grad walk. They actually subsidize half of our regalia prices. So I think I wish that were the case at Bowie as well, but I think it's definitely something to look at to see why it can't be done, just given the circumstances.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, David. Has anybody else got that? That's awesome. Way to go, Salisbury. That's really cool. I'm sorry, I thought someone else had something else for that one. I can move on to the next thing if not.
I was just going to say, I know student government has done like grad donation drives essentially. So like trying to encourage students to donate their robes after. But I think it's just a large issue of like, obviously they have to be purchased somehow, but at the same time to make it a requirement and then have students purchase it, like, why is that not just included in something already or whatnot? And so I think that's, if you're requiring everyone who's attending graduation to have something, then the school should be doing a better job to provide that if it's a requirement.
Fair enough, definitely. Very good. With that, also kind of on the, it felt like when I read this, it was concern. If it wasn't a concern, I'm sorry if I misread it. But Thomas from Frostburg, if you want to speak to, it felt like the campus report was really focusing on the postponement of the provost search. Is that something you all are concerned about, how that happened, or are you cool with it and you know what's going to happen next?
Well, we're actually pretty or not excited. Excited, it's not the right word. We're all right with it being postponed. I know students were a large part of that selection process, or the looking for a candidate or candidates for that position. And I know that 2 candidates were brought to campus, and both were relatively controversial for both students and faculty. So, and students did a good job of displaying concern for both candidates. And I thought it was really good of the university to postpone the decision until the fall, or the continuing search until the fall, because it really shows that they were listening to student concerns and they were valuing it. So I agree with it. I think that it's a good thing that they're listening to students and pushing it back.
That's awesome. I love that was good news. That's fantastic. I'm glad they listened. So does that mean you'll just restart like when? I don't know when.
I think, as far as I know, I'm pretty sure they're just like stopping it now, and then they'll resume it in the fall or restart a search in the fall.
Very cool. And students will be on that search. They'll still like be included. Perfect.
As far as I know.
That's awesome. I love that that was good news. I only saw I was like, is this a problem? Postponing? Like, I'm sorry. Do you really need a provost right this second? That's how I read the campus report. I see.
Annie.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you that their interim provost, Dr. Mike Mathias, is actually doing a solid job. He's very engaged and paying a great deal of attention across the entire campus. So I think there are many of us that are feeling comfortable in the decision that Frostburg made. If there were a huge gap or something was floundering, we would not feel nearly as good as we do about it.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's very cool. I saw in the chat a few additional things. One sounded like a pretty cool idea, so I'm just going to say it out loud about the graduation stuff. I don't know about all the individual campuses. I know there's very specific robes, at least for graduate students at College Park, so it's been an ongoing discussion there. But this sounds pretty cool. If the graduations are virtual, what if as a cost-saving measure, it was just a filter to have a graduation cap? I thought that was a pretty good idea. Actually save people some money. So I'm just giving that some space to actually get vocalized. I thought that was a cool idea, Laura. You have cap and gown filters for all. All right. And so I don't leave anyone out. Okay. The other, we had a couple more. One was Shady Grove. This actually looked positive, but feel free to elaborate. It looks like you all are being included a lot in COVID impact and response. Do you want to share a little bit more about that going on your campus and what that really looks like on the ground?
Annie, was that Joy who filled out that report?
I think it was Jesse.
Or Jesse? Are they on the call?
Yeah, Jesse's here and Joy is here and you are here.
Okay, yeah, Jesse wanted to respond to that if that's what they filled out.
Okay. Jesse, are you there? It's hard to tell sometimes when there's a little box. I could have caught Jesse right when they went to the bathroom. And then I feel like, yes.
This is Joe. I can jump in for just a second. Because Shady Grove does not have, as a regional center, does not have the same infrastructure for student health, if you will, that usual campuses have. It has not been as easy to roll out a testing program at Shady Grove. And one of the needs that the students at Shady Grove has is a place to come to the campus and study, even if there aren't face-to-face classes, because so many of the students at Shady Grove are in family situations. They need a quiet place to study. And it took us a while to get things straightened out so that we could get the testing protocols in place so students could come to the Shady Grove campus and utilize study space and some interactions. But this is one of those situations where it was really important for us to do it right rather than just fast, but it is in place now. And I think that's one of the ways that the campus, that Shady Grove was able to be responsive to a student request.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to that, I know the student requests came from some of our nursing students and also our education students because they were teaching online at home and there was a lot of distractions. So we actually met with Robin DiNicola Weigel, who's the chief officer for student affairs. And she actually was really helpful with getting a space on campus. And yes, there's protocols in place now, and we're still figuring out some things with COVID. I believe Dr. Ann Kademian just updated students at the town hall. I wasn't able to be at that particular town hall that she was at updating, but I do know that they're putting things in place for the upcoming fall semester.
That sounds really needed and really good. Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks for sharing that. And that actually directly relates to the campus report from Dan Laffin, actually. Dan, I was hoping maybe you could speak to the childcare advocacy going on at College Park, as well as there seem to be some interesting topics surrounding like vaccine eligibility confusion.
Sure, yeah. So as far as childcare, there's been a push lately. So context, at College Park, there's what's called the CYC, and I'm blanking on what that acronym is, but it is a university-provided childcare center daycare. And it's available for faculty, staff, and students. And it's roughly, I think, $1,300 a month, if I remember correctly, which if you do it out by 12 months, it's about $15,600 per year if you need it all 12 months. And an assistantship at Maryland on average pays about $24,000 a year in stipend. So like mathematically, what that tells you is if you're an assistant, you better not have 2 kids because you can't pay for 2 kids at that center. Or you have to find childcare outside of what the university is providing, which arguably is not that less cost effective. And so the push here has been to look at other Big Ten institutions, other kind of similarly sized institutions, basically anything that's comparable for better models for providing care, cost, benefits, additional stipends that can only be used for childcare, for example, is a model we're looking at. I want to say it's the University of Illinois has a sliding scale where tuition changes based on your status. And if you're caring for a child, whether you're a parent or just a guardian, shouldn't say just a guardian, if you're a parent or a guardian, you pay different tuition, which helps with overall cost, obviously. And so where it stands right now at College Park is we being members of the GSG presented to the Joint Council of DGS and CGS, which is the directors of graduate studies and the coordinators of graduate studies, basically saying, you know, this is a graduate school wide issue. For obvious reasons, caring for children is more prevalent for graduate students than undergraduate students. Not exclusively a graduate student issue, but just more prevalent. And it was kind of a twofold approach. It was, you know, there's a cost aspect to this that we need to address on a university level, on a graduate school level. And then there's also, you know, individual departments that are doing a better job of accommodating for individuals with children than other departments, and kind of just shining a light on, you know, Department A is doing great, but Department B is doing really poorly. Why is that at the same institution? Like, should your treatment of you and your child be different just because you're studying one thing versus another thing? All of the departments hit the policy requirements. We're not saying they don't, but some just go above and beyond. And sometimes that's even like faculty member by faculty member, not even department by department. We're seeing some headway with that, more on the second issue than the first issue. The financial ones, you know, typically tend to take longer because it's just a longer process to get money reallocated or costs changed. But we've already seen some individual departments reach out to us, basically saying, you know, what can we do in the short term? Are we up to kind of the standards of other departments, which is very cool to see. So that one has some momentum, which is nice. It's been a larger push of the year, really, especially in this pandemic setting where a lot of people are learning with children in the home with them. And a lot of their children are also doing online school. So if you're trying to monitor your 6-year-old, making sure, you know, she's in class, can you also be in class and actually be learning at the same time? It's a challenge that I do not envy. And then the second half, very different, is the discrepancies on who is and is not eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine among graduate assistants. So, similar constituency here. By law, graduate assistants are not employees. That's the whole push with collective bargaining, and that's been the story for years. Also, by law, if you work in K through 12 or higher education or are a support staff for education, you're eligible in the 1B phase of the vaccine distribution. So what happens when you work as support staff for higher education, but you're not an employee? And I still don't have the answer. I really don't. There was communication that went out recently from GAC, which is the Graduate Assistant Advisory Committee, saying that all graduate assistants were eligible, but in the email, they classified assistants as employees. So once again, is that correct? From what we're seeing, at least in the College Park community, assistants who are doing in-person instruction, so they're a teaching assistant or are doing research in an in-person lab or any kind of in-person setting, basically they're getting the benefit of the doubt and have been able to get the vaccine, but we are seeing some cases where people are being rejected just because they're not classified, like legally speaking, they're not classified correctly. Like I'll wrap up in saying that I am an assistant, I'm a graduate assistant in my position, but nothing that I do needs to be in person or is in person. So like I emailed the director of our student union, basically saying, do you, like, in your opinion, am I eligible? I don't necessarily need it, quote unquote, versus some other people. I'm not trying to jump the line, but like, just from my understanding, would I be eligible? And she was like, I have to look into it. I really have no idea at the moment. So it's still up in the air. Obviously people are getting frustrated with it. I'm not, again, trying to advocate for myself or others to jump the line. We're just trying to figure out who is and isn't eligible so we can communicate that effectively. So if any of you are having similar struggles or have had successes in either of those, childcare or vaccine distribution pursuits, please let me know because that would be very helpful. All right, that was a long spiel, but back to you, Annie.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. That was really informative. Thank you. Niv, you have your hand up. What's up?
So actually, this is something that maybe coincidental timing also came out at UMB just yesterday. We had some students in the law school saying that, talking about not apparent, don't want to use that word, about vaccine distribution inequality. Mostly, now I need to clarify these details, but they're saying that they feel some students are getting the vaccine who they feel should not be qualifying for it. So I'm trying to get from them some wording, some clarity as to, okay, are you talking about law school students? Because I know that for the most part, they are all online, but I know that medical students, nursing students, graduate students have been able to get the vaccine if they were available. So I know that this is a concern among students who are doing online learning. And also there was some concern of the fact that students are even getting vaccinated when there's such an obvious disparity in vaccine accessibility between students and the Baltimore community. So at UMB, I'm trying to work on figuring out more of the eligibility and how the medical center is distributing these vaccines between students and the Baltimore community, because as far as I know, it was a percentage of vaccines were meant for UMB eligible people. But I think there's some transparency concerns and some accountability concerns because some students are feeling that students shouldn't be getting vaccinated when high-risk groups have still not been able to get their appointments. So I don't know if Joe or Zakia can give some more information about this. So we're trying to figure it out. I know at our Senate meeting on Wednesday, we're going to try and address this. So I know stuff from my end, which is who's eligible and why they're eligible, but I'm not sure. I need to confirm if the law school students are concerned that there are law school students who are jumping the line, for example. So I'm just trying to get more clarity about that, and hopefully I'll have an update about that soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Nev and Dan, I wish I could give you some clarity on the vaccine eligibility. You are correct in that we worked very hard to get higher education reclassified into 1B along with K-12 students. So at least those that were doing face-to-face would be considered eligible at all. It all depends on, I mean, the entire structure of 1A, 1B, 1C, and so on is on your risk level, and those that are in congregate face-to-face settings are at a higher risk, obviously. So, but it depends on which site you go to. There have been some people who have gone to one site and gotten a vaccine, and people with exactly the same criteria that have been turned away from another site because there is just so much confusion out there. I wish I could make it clearer for you, but here's what I will say. The vaccine is starting to flow. Last night, for the first time, we reached 50,000 shots in one day. And at that rate, if the vaccine continues to flow, the frustration should be starting to be relieved within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I encourage people to continue to find out whether and where you might be eligible, or it would be possible for you to go. That would include some of the mass vac sites, but we are also starting to see vaccine flow to local pharmacies as well. So this is, I can only tell you, being on 1 or 2 or 3 calls a day around vaccine, it is not at all clear from the very top down.
Thank you, Joe. That's actually extremely helpful. So from my side, I'm trying to get clarity as to whether this has been miscommunication, because I know the school is doing a lot, but it's unprecedented times. So I think people just might be looking at few facts and making extrapolations. So I'm doing everything from my end. And I think I just want to get more clarity as to when students said people are jumping the line, it's also like, okay, are these the ineligible students who are jumping the line? Because I know at UMB there's a strict policy as to who's been getting it and who hasn't been getting it. So just need to work on that, which is why I didn't elaborate in the campus report, but because Dan brought it up, I just wanted to share that this is a similar concern at UMB because we are a research and a medical institute. So Dan, I hope that helps a little bit. And if we can always talk one-on-one if this situation persists, and share resources and with others as well. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And then last but not least by any means, UMB's awesome update from NIV, which is the inaugural VP position is about to be announced soon for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's really good news. That's awesome. So now we're going to try our hands at the live poll again so that we get to pick our 2 breakout rooms. Please vote 2 choices and we'll pick the top 2, and then you pick the breakout room you want, and yay. We'll see. I'm just going to see myself too. If I say anything wrong about that breakout room pool, feel free to correct me.
Annie, I'm trying to do it.
Okay.
But give me a second.
No worries.
While we're working the poll, Joe, maybe you can help me answer my question. When we were talking earlier about the P20 and community college agreements, is military transfer credit agreements a part of that, or is that a completely separate department altogether?
That one is really separate because that involves a prior learning assessment process to make sure that credit is given where credit is due. And UMGC is way ahead of everybody else in that process. They have an entire unit of people that in fact do that assessment, and the other campuses just don't have that capability. Although we are talking much more about it now as we open up the discussion around badging and stacked credentials. The military prior learning assessments are falling into that and are being discussed much more serious than they were even 12 months ago.
That's really good to hear. I know that agreement is something that was one of the top priorities as to why I chose my undergrad school and my graduate school and my friends as well. So you can get the most, you don't have to repeat all the things that we've already learned. And I always kind of didn't understand why other schools at USM didn't, have that same kind of I don't know, acceptance that UMGC did. So
it's the capability to actually assess the content of the prior learning.
Okay. Is there any way that they could, share resources on that? Like,
well, we're talking more about it. It's a matter of manpower, though, if you will, or person power. Just the number of the amount of expertise and the number of people it takes to actually go through a portfolio and assess the content and the transferability. It's just a matter of limited resources. We would all be doing it if we weren't so limited in resources.
So would you say that that's maybe because different schools have different ideas of what they want to accept for transfers?
There is some of that, and we continue to have challenges when we're talking about some of that transferability. For example, there is a calculus course that our community colleges give that at least one of our campuses uses exactly the same textbook, exactly the same outcomes, but they say that it's not transferable because they're sure that the community colleges are not being taught as much as their own students are. I mean, and so it's something that we keep at the front of our minds all of the time, and we're constantly talking about the transferability. I spent 2 hours with 5 of the community college presidents last week, kind of getting beat over the head about how we were not accepting some of the courses that we should be. So it's a constant battle.
Thank you.
One of the things that we're trying to do, though, is rather than in the course equivalency, rather than simply looking at the curriculum, we're looking at outcomes now. And we have 400 faculty right now working in teams across the community colleges in the 4 years to get transfer equivalency in courses better aligned. So it's very much on our minds and working very hard. Keeping up with those 400 faculty is a job and a half. But they're trying.
Thank you.
So I launched the poll. Sorry, this is totally different. I launched the poll and like 10 people had voted, and then it wiped out all the poll results and it started over. And another 4 people have voted. I've kind of kept track of it in my head. But if anybody wants to re-vote, just vote. Just don't want to just pick the wrong things if I may read it wrong. Okay. Thank you all. Keep voting. Yep, the number's going up. Much appreciated.
And while everyone's voting, I was still curious to see if y'all know how the cap and gowns, I guess more specifically photos, are being handled across institutions. I know I've gone through this process once before, and at UMGC, there used to be kind of one day where students could come and learn about the graduation process, sign up for class rings, things like that, get their plaques, and have a picture taken with their cap and gown. But that was pre-COVID. So I'm wondering, do other institutions, did y'all have something similar, and how's that being handled now?
I haven't heard anything about like in-person pictures or anything. I know they had a grad fair last week at Salisbury, but I think that was just signing up to get like the cap and gown and ordering it and everything like that. But I haven't heard anything about pictures or anything in person right now. They are planning like for the actual graduation though to I guess having a 2 parts and had the hybrid. The online Zoom, and then have a grad walk hopefully outside at Seagull Stadium. But that's their plan right now. We know information and plans right now change every day. So that's the latest news that we have.
All right, I'm gonna give people like 10 more seconds to vote if you want. We have two pretty clear forerunners at the moment, and that is affordability fees is number one and mental health is number two. But I'll give this like another 10 seconds.
Annie, if in for affordability and fees, I know during our special meeting when we discussed the two documents that we were able to share, I know Bernetta put them in the OneDrive, but I also know that not everybody was there at the special meeting. So Bernetta, if you wouldn't mind resharing that, I think that may be helpful, at least so everybody can see it.
Sure, that was for the student fees feedback from the president's Nate.
And then the other Word document with just the general points that we discussed a week or two ago.
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Excellent. So yeah, those are our top two still. We had a few more people vote. Thank you. Affordability and fees and mental health are the top two. We'll go ahead and set those two breakout rooms up. I would ask, this is kind of a given, but just in case I need to say it, since we happen to have both of our chairs for student fees and mental health here, if you could opt into those groups, if you all don't mind doing that, just so you hear this wider group from the council speaking directly to those committees you're leading, that would be great. And then I would love that. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So just, if Dan can go over there and Beth can go, that would be awesome. And then you can put me wherever. Those are both awesome topics. And I don't know how other, I guess I'll get to pick with everybody else. I wasn't sure because I'm a co-host, but I can be put wherever.
So just to confirm, are we getting shuttled into those different groups, or is there going to be a pop-up where we can select which breakout group?
There's going to be a pop-up. So the pop-up will be for affordability and fees. And if you don't pick that, you stay in this main room, which will be mental health. I just opened it. And if for some reason you can't move yourself, just pop your name in the chat like a couple of people just did. You're either going to affordability or staying for mental health.
I don't see the box to move. Can you put me in student fees, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'd like to go to student fees as well.
Do you mind moving me over there too?
Okay, if I miss you, just give me a second. David, I'm sending you. I heard you. Nate is asking to go. Got it. I'm sending Joe. Niv, I'm sending you. Matt, got it. Who did I miss in the chat? Ashley's gonna stay, okay. Dan wants to go to fees. Okay, if you're left, you're here for mental health. Matt, I see your face again. Why do I have two Matts?
There have been two Matts all meeting.
I'm moving the other Matt too.
Yeah. There have been two Matts all meet. I mean, I love Matt, so double the Matt, double awesome. But yeah, there have been two Matts on the screen all day. I'm totally fine either staying or going, but I do think one of the three of us at least should go to student.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, y'all can send me over to the fees. I think I've been heavily involved with those guys.
Okay.
1 second. Okay, so now once Bernetta goes, everybody else who is here intends to be here for mental health.
And I'm happy to help take notes for mental health. Beth, do you want to lead just because you're the committee chair? If you feel called, or you can take notes and I can.
No, that would be wonderful
Okay.
to have somebody taking notes.
I got notes, guys.
You do? Oh, thanks, Laura.
Awesome. Yes. No, and Laura and Annie have both been really involved and engaged with what we're doing as well, and a lot of the conversations that have gone on. So just to sort of get this particular breakout moving, we know that mental health has been sort of an undercurrent rather, with all of the issues that we've discussed so far. So something that I kind of wanted to ask you guys just off the bat is, was there a particular issue or concern, was it related to COVID or something that brought you to this breakout session today, and just take a minute or two to talk about that? And if not, no worries, we can keep it moving, but I'm just gonna give everybody a couple seconds.
I can add something. Sorry if my washing machine is loud in the background, but at least something, and we are moving forward, kind of working on it at UMB, but something that students have repeatedly brought up is the current existing student healthcare, United Healthcare. The mental health services that they offer is through Healthiest You. And I know we've kind of brought this up a little bit in this space before, but they are attempting to address some of the concerns, but there are still really big disparities in oh my goodness, it seems really loud, so I'm sorry. The variety and diversity of providers that they have for students to access, and the fact that the platform itself is really not accessible for students. And so some students either are discouraged and do not seek any type of therapy, or they try to go outside of the system and get private care, which is so expensive and creates a new burden on students. And it just seems like the issues keep coming. And at this point, one of the things we've been told is that this is a United Healthcare decision to move to Healthiest You. And so now we're kind of stuck with this thing. And unfortunately, it's been really hard to make any progress on making it more accessible for students, not only just for students, but also I think for providers to be integrated into the system as well, because apparently some of them are, in an attempt to improve the diversity of providers, some providers are having trouble integrating into the system. So this is a huge problem that we're trying to address right now, especially for graduate students at UMB.
That's really good information. And, definitely I'd heard about the Healthiest You platform and some concerns with that, but that specific background is really beneficial. And so some things I've heard, and confirm me if this is wrong or not, that limitations in the number of visits, also caps. It's just basically very hard to get continuity of care and access. Like if you need somebody, it might be a month out, and then maybe you're only able to get 1 or 2 visits, which for ongoing care can be kind of challenging. Is that similar to what you've been hearing?
Well, so at UMB, at least in the context of Healthiest You, my understanding is that there is a possibility to have continued care. It's just that UMB themselves actually doesn't offer continued care. They only offer, the idea is short-term care and allowing for help in emergency and crises situations. But beyond that, the goal is to refer out through the student insurance. And so as you might expect with the existing issues with the referred student therapy options, there's an issue in that, students aren't able to have that continuation of care in a place that they feel safe, say at UMB with a counselor that they're used to. and then when they're referred to Healthiest U, they kind of get lost in space. And I know that the counseling center at UMB is aware, everyone is aware of this, and I think people are working on it, but I am curious if other schools are experiencing something similar, and if there is any thoughts on things that we could continue to do or try differently to make it better.
Zakia, I just saw that you came on. I didn't know if you wanted to contribute around the discussions we've had about the counseling centers and things like that. But if you want to chime in, feel free.
Right. So I don't have specifics for each university. So if someone else knows for their school, please chime in. But I do know that it's not rare that after a certain number of visits, or depending on the severity of the situation, that a student is referred out. That's not totally uncommon. So the main thing I would suggest, and I think it's great, Emily, that you're saying everyone knows at UMB and everyone's working on it, but folks should try to be aware of what your school's procedures are for referring out. How many visits might a student be able to get on campus before they refer it out? Or what kinds of conditions or situations are automatically referred out? There are procedures in place. So I would recommend that if this is a concern, or just to kind of know what's happening at your university, talk to your counseling center director and see what's happening at your campus, because it's not rare, but you do want to have a good sense of number of visits that are possible before different things have to happen. And here's how I've heard it put one time, for the most severe situations, many of our counseling centers aren't prepared to handle them. They just aren't. If you need a psychiatrist, if you need long-term care, the way I heard it put was that if someone had had stage 4 cancer, they're probably going to go to a specialist, not just to their school health center. So kind of think of it the same way, that if it's so severe or long lasting, then it may be best to be referred out. Now, if the place you're being referred has some issues, I'm glad you have the professionals on campus to help navigate that. But again, it's not rare that at a certain point, people get referred out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, that's okay, Emily. Yeah.
I was just, sorry, I just want to add one more thing. So actually last semester, we did meet with the counseling center. We created this, we called it like a referral FAQ and posted it on the website for students. But I sense that, that's probably not the best place to put it. And maybe we need to disseminate it in a different way to raise awareness on the process. Because we did see that there was a gap in the knowledge of referrals and how that all works. And the one thing too that was a little bit difficult was that the counseling center, they didn't want to say how many sessions they would give per student, because in their eyes, they actually don't have a rule. They said it like depends on the student. Like we don't want to say 4 and they need 5, which I understand, but they also didn't want to say it can be unlimited, because then they might put themselves in a situation where they couldn't take care of everyone. So that no matter what happened, it's still kind of, there was that cloud of misunderstanding that persisted even after we made that document, and which I can understand why, but there's still, students are still confused about that.
That's really good information, Emily. Yeah, I mean, and just to echo Zakia's point, a lot of what students are experiencing, it might be their first experience sort of outside the home setting, or maybe their first experience in general, and trying to seek out care for more in-depth needs. And the challenges that you're experiencing on campus are mirrored across the health system in the country, that it's not unique to the school or even to the state. And, right now we also have the benefit of some telehealth sharing compacts that are going on at the state level that allow students to seek care outside a state that they normally might be in. So you might be able to get care from a physician or a psychiatrist in Pennsylvania, maybe when you're living in Maryland, or vice versa. So some of those agreements will sunset. So that's kind of a good transition to where I wanted to go next. We heard from the strategic planning group, and we've heard in continued conversations, what are the opportunities we have at the system level to bring more clarity to things or to do something differently. And in the vein of opportunities, I definitely think that mental health is one of those that, something that the committee had been talking about from the very beginning is just kind of a general statement, sort of a resolution of mental health for the students, and then also language that all staff and faculty can use in syllabi or in communications that sort of redirects back to campus resources or also state resources, depending on the need. That's been done through also the student ID bill that we offered a statement in support of, that those crisis lines are listed. But as we think about longer term, how can we support student mental health? What are the opportunities there? I am biased in coming from UMGC, where we really don't have anybody. We have nothing compared to the other university campuses, or very little resources. So what are the opportunities, or what are the discussions going on about sharing resources where it's possible, where it makes sense, where we can facilitate those? Oh, Laura, I can't remember if you can help me with the name, the non-clinical support groups, basically the student support groups that weren't actually administered by a medical professional.
I know what you're talking about, but the title.
Yeah, I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
But I think that
psychosocial. Was it psychosocial
Maybe?
support groups?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. But the idea would be that maybe even administered across campuses, that there would be these different psychosocial support groups that sort of allow students to connect with one another and share, whether it be, chronic mental health challenge, or whether it be like identity, social, or specific to a specific concern or reaction. If there's a national news-making crisis, that maybe there's a psychosocial support group for USM students across campuses to connect with one another and sort of understand what resources are available at the macro level, that could be something. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there for you guys and ask, what kind of opportunities do you see, or are you talking about right now? And also, nothing, if you don't have any ideas, that's fine. But it's good to get these conversations sort of out there and start thinking about these things in the ways that, we can work across SGs to reach out more to students and to reach out and connect those offices that might not be. Zakia helped us connect with a group of counseling centers and counselors across campuses. That was really beneficial. I mean, I do want to say that I applaud them for trying what they've done. As you guys have seen, there's just an overwhelming need. And, our counselors are people too, that they're, trying to work from home and balance their lives as well, and respond to a gargantuan crisis that they might not all have the resources to respond to. So in that, we can also listen on the reverse and make sure that we're advocating, for everything that we could possibly advocate for on this side as we go into strategic planning. Then that is beneficial.
Well, let me just say that I appreciate Emily sharing the information that they did have those conversations about numbers of visits. And it does make sense that maybe that's not a hard and fast number, and that it does depend. Like I said, depending on the condition or the services that a student needs, that absolutely makes sense. But as far as outreach, with what Beth was just talking about, and there being an overwhelming need, we're still hearing from some counseling centers that they have the capacity to see more students. Students either aren't coming, aren't coming back for a follow-up appointment, but there's some capacity that still can be used or filled. And so we had a conversation at the last counseling center meeting about outreach too. How do students know? How do they know what's there? Because the counseling center directors talked about a number of groups that they have in their counseling centers, and they could be more utilized. It seems certain to me that students would benefit from them. But I think part of the challenge that we have right now is, if you think about the degrees to which people didn't know what was happening when everybody was on campus. Now we're all remote and we're wondering, or mostly remote, and are wondering how to get information out that was difficult to get out when people were face to face. So I'm hoping that maybe something that can be discussed here in the future is how the student government associations, graduate student associations can help push out the word too. First, you got to know what's there. So it entails you all talking to your counseling centers as far as what groups are there. How can we help send students your way? I know sometimes the counseling centers have student advisory boards. Check to see if yours has a student advisory board. But then having a conversation with the counseling center's leadership, to see how you can help them pass the word to students. It's not your job to do it on your own, but if you think about the services that you want to give to your stakeholders, the additional outreach it couldn't do anything but help, because it just seems like there's still some room to use some of the services that are there. And if the service isn't there, let's have that conversation too.
Yeah, my mind keeps going to like the broader issue. Like I'm wondering how much of it has to do with like whether or not there's a stigma like among people about even seeking mental health services, you know, like especially right now, because some people there's I don't know what it is, but some people are, it's almost like ashamed to feel like you can't hack it in the current situation. So, or even identifying that it is a mental health issue and it's not like a pandemic issue. So I guess like identify, if you haven't had like previous experience with like mental health or seeking help or knowing even where to start, or that there is an issue, you may just be like in your own little bubble. Like, and I'm wondering like if there's anything that can be done to bridge the gap between like this service exists and you may be a person that should seek this service.
I think that's a great question that folks should have with their counseling center directors. And Beth, you're right, you don't have a center in the traditional sense, but I can point you to the administrator who listens to the counseling center conversations, because he still wants to make sure that services are provided in one way or another, that the information is there, or they can point you in the right direction. But since I'm not a mental health professional myself, I can't answer that question specifically, Ashley, but it's an important one to have a discussion and say, hey, counseling center director, stigma, confusion about whether it's pandemic craziness or if I have some things that need addressed. That's a smart conversation to have.
Yeah, I think it'd be kind of nice to do like a social media thing, like almost like I don't know, like for me, like I imagine like almost like a check, like a self-check, a mental health self-check situation. You know how like people have like reminders about like other like health related things. So maybe it could be like a student health check, like here's what signs of depression or like look like, and here's the services that exist, and or here's you can contact this person to find services, or how to navigate the system in general, because even outside of schools it's very hard to find providers that match what the issue is. So like I forget who was mentioning it before, but the person that you go to may not be your specialty. So for the ones that go one time and never return, it may just not have been a good fit. And if there's only one counselor or a couple and none of them are a good fit, then what do you do?
Yeah, and just sort of building on what Ashley said, and is something we've talked about. We're like, oh, well, let's do a social media campaign around that. I think it would be good to get from the communications committee at some point in the near future sort of what we know about our USM level social media following. We know we want to grow it, but what really has it been? Do we have the reach to do this at the USM SC level right now? Or is it more appropriate to develop things or to support the individual student bodies and student committees to connect with their counseling offices and promote the more organic connections? Because it would personally confuse me UMGC not having a direct counseling office, I can't promote something for USM and say all students go to your counseling office, because that's not going to work for us. It's not a one-to-one. So empowering those individual solutions. And if anybody who's on this particular segment of the call right now wants to, it would be great to liaise with you and see, if you personally are interested in leading that effort, or if someone on your campus is interested in leading that effort. Because making those connections that are more direct to the resources available to your student populations is key. And in terms of broader things that we can do, again, we're going to have sort of that draft language for comment that I'm going to share, with all of you, with the USMSC, and with our committee of representatives. But as we start thinking about continuity and having those discussions, this isn't going to go away in a month or 2 or 3 or 4. This is a longitudinal effort that needs to happen. So those of you who might be interested as student leaders or know somebody who's interested, let's get them in the conversation now, because, we want to get ahead of this for the next academic year, since we're sort of at the close of this one. And really make sure that those discussions are ongoing. And I had something else and it completely escaped my mind, but I just wanted to get a really quick opinion before I do, actually, on time. Annie, how are we doing on time? Do we need to break?
We're fine. We have about 10 minutes till everybody's put back in the same room. Oh,
right.
Yeah, Laura?
I have a question. I might already know the answer to this, but I thought I'd ask anyway. Are there any mental health resources that can be shared across campuses, or are we just talking about collaboration of ideas and bouncing that off? Is there anything that, like, one school could be like, hey, we have availability, maybe students from another school could share?
I can think of one. It's not affiliated with schools, but like one of the great resources that exists is 211. And that's like just people in general. Like maybe rather than like reinventing and creating something from scratch, utilizing things that already exist that are effective and are broader, like something like 211, you can actually like address several issues. So if like your mental health has to do with like finding food or whatever, like you can have one-stop situation where you can find mental health resources and all the other barriers that are contributing to that. So I don't know if that's like an option to promote that, but I mean, that's free and it's statewide.
Yeah. And I think one other resource that I've really enjoyed sort of looking at as we've gone through this is Crisis Text Line. Yes, it's an available text service, but they also have a data piece that's available for institutions. And there are other institutional partnerships that look at mental health and counseling for students. What is the sort of trend of the issues that they're calling about? What's the trend of when they're calling? That it would be good long-term to have that data at the system level. And that's not as easy as it sounds. I know, but when we're talking about opportunities to invest as a system and system leadership, having those resources and stewardship of those could be something that's really beneficial. Laura?
Are you saying that this crisis text line is not confidential and anonymous, but they're using your data to, do whatever they want to do with?
It is confidential and anonymous, but they do say, like, at a high level, or do you have, say, University of Maryland College Park contracts with them? If 500 students call in, they do report to the institution, well, 200 of your students are calling about major depression or something like that, or homelessness, or that there's a concern. So it's anonymized. It's not reported by the individual, but they have already sort of pre-established information and categories out there. But that is a valid point in terms of privacy. I'm actually trying to pull up some of the information I have on that, and I'll try to drop it in the chat as well. But that's a great point. One of the things that we heard from students also to talk about things you can take back to your individual campus is that a lot are discouraged by telehealth practices right now. They don't feel they have a private space to take calls or to seek help in. So in so much is you have influence on your campuses to get spaces in dorms or to get administrative space for students to be able to engage in telehealth. related to mental health issues, that could be really beneficial. Also, as we're talking about broadly the mental health issues, and we talked about the stigma piece of it, and not just social media, not just checking in, sort of getting a sense from your student populations and relaying to us, what kind of barriers are you encountering? What kind of language are you encountering? Recently myself, I found it interesting that the concept of fairness was brought up in a discussion. Noting that if you have extreme challenges or extreme difficulty at some point, that you're not being fair to other students by asking or reaching out for help or any kind of accommodation. And that's not something that I had encountered before, but it is something I had heard from other students before. So karma, getting to sort of feel and be part of that. But definitely if you are hearing that kind of thing from your student populations, bring that to us as well. So when we look at doing that draft language and the commentary and all that, we can say, sort of general guidance, these are things that are kind of triggering for students, and take that to the counseling professionals to sort of have them actually say, this is how you as faculty or staff member want to approach that dialogue, and be open about that. So just to put that out there as well.
I think that's a great point, Beth. And I would validate I'm so sorry you're going through it personally right now. I just want to validate that I have heard that exact sentiment from so many students across the system because of this particular position I'm in. It is happening all the time. I'll hear it from the students in MHEC. I'll hear it from, I'm hearing it a lot from the student leaders themselves, and also what the student leaders are relaying about the people coming to them too. So it makes me wonder, where is the opportunity we have to work with in any possible collaboration with the Council of System faculty to talk about getting some of this out there? Because the amount of times I'm hearing, like you were mentioning, the mental health support systems on campuses are a lot of times feeling stretched. There are people too. The faculty are like, we can only handle so much. We can only accommodate so much. We're people too living through a pandemic, et cetera. But is there something we can do with the system faculty to improve it for everyone? Because the amount of students who are having, and that's kind of like by the time a student gets up the guts to go to a faculty member to say, I am so stressed out, I can't get this, I need one tiny extension, please. If they're met with the opposite of empathy, I'm noticing it's a turnoff. It's a turnoff to the entire university. It's a turnoff to, why am I in this spot in my life? Am I doing the right thing? Am I, it's for some reason, it's kind of one of these straws. I'm not saying it's always the last straw for somebody, but sometimes I don't know if people realize how much it took for somebody to even ask for that little bit of flexibility. So I don't know, but maybe, yeah.
What if we took that burden off the students, and what if, I don't know what type of platform you all are using for the classrooms, but say you guys have a message board, if every faculty member when they're starting a new semester says, hey, here's this post, it's going to be like a sticky post, and it says, if at any point you are seeking or needing this type of support, or if you aren't aware that it exists, just put it out there for every person that's attending that class, because that has a lot of reach, and it may not apply to everybody, but it also is a conscious thing done by the faculty member to keep that in the back of their mind that, yes, this is still a weird time, these services exist, and these students are going through this. So it rather than having the students take on the burden of breaking the ice about that conversation.
Actually, I think that's a really good idea. Here at Bowie, some professors do that. Last semester, I had a professor who actually made us take time out during class and use the Calm app to because she knows a lot of students are really stressed because this is new to us. And also, some of our student leaders are actually having little support groups. Yesterday, Miss Freshman had a breakfast with her, and a whole bunch of students came. It was mental health support stuff. I couldn't make it, but I heard it was good.
That's awesome.
So I thought that what Beth has been talking about, the document, was going to cover some of this. in the way of connections to faculty or suggestions or a resolution. Am I missing what the point is of that?
No, you're absolutely on track with what that should be. And as we're talking, I'm kind of wondering if there's even a more basic way of sort of researching additional things people might want in there, like word association or something. If you guys have any comments, I think what I'm going to try to do, and I might solicit help on this, is create a Google Doc where you all can submit sort of open-ended comments. Like, Paige, I think that's amazing that your professor sort of took the time out and said, I hadn't heard of anyone doing that before to this point. I'm sure that they aren't the only one, but submitting things like that as well, that might be sort of guidance that can surround any language we do come up with, could be beneficial and could help our faculty and staff in responding. But Zakia, you got the point absolutely right, that we want something that can go, if not on online learning platforms, but in syllabi, so that all students sort of have access to that. And just one final thing I wanted to add, I wonder also if there's a role of an advocate that might come up at our different campuses or institutions for students who are in crisis and might not be capable, or might not have the opportunity to really sort of advance what they need and advocate. Because yes, and I love baby cameo, by the way. That is the best. That is the highlight of the breakout room. But yeah, so if we could have some sort of advocate role, like who would that be on a campus or counseling center? Obviously we have to learn self-advocacy as learners, whether you are a graduate student or an undergraduate student, and for medical reasons, you might need to sign off, but there might be a role there for somebody who can be a success coach or already expand on a role of success coach that can sort of help you continually connect and amplify where necessary to get the help you need. So that's just final sort of thought there.
I have another idea. Could we maybe have like a mental health event day?
That sounds wonderful.
A what?
A mental health event day. So like we've done that where like we have activities where it's still fun and everything, and you can do it virtually or in person depending on where you're at. And it seems to help.
So like sort of like an awareness day?
Something like that. But you still have like events where like they made it like a carnival type thing where you have fun events, but it was like so incorporated into mental health.
That's awesome.
It's hard to explain, but
So
it
maybe
was
we
fun.
can have Beth and Paige talk on the side, because everybody's back now. We've brought the student fees group back. But thanks for sharing that, Paige.
Yeah, that was great. I think everyone's back now ish. So yeah, we will go ahead and depart. But if anybody has any final announcements or questions, I'll throw two out there on behalf of Arsalan, because Arsalan had to leave to have a meeting with Nancy Pelosi, which is kind of cool. What? Right? Like direct messaging me, he's like, I'm so sorry, I have to leave at 1. I'm meeting with Nancy Pelosi. I'm like, cool. It's cool, Arsalan. It's cool. So this is on behalf of Arsalan. So two of those updates are, please, if you have not, vote for the Future Act and the Hunger Campus Free. I got that all mixed up, but you know what I'm trying to say. The Hunger Free Campus. That's right. Hunger Free Campus Act. Please vote on those. Arsalan is just can't wait to work on those, whichever way you all vote. So thank you. Does anybody else have any other updates, announcements, etc. before we close?
Yes, Annie. I would like to still do our recap from the breakout room.
Oh yeah,
just real quick, because I know you probably but yeah. So this was so interesting, and all right. So let me just jump into it. So we started off talking about student fees, just opening that up again, right? And it was interesting to kind of hear for the first time that while there is some concern around student fees, and we know we have bills in the works to address that, campuses have been getting more creative at providing online programs, right? So what would have normally been in person and what students are paying for, they're providing it online to the extent that they can. So College Park gave some examples of that, like 5K events, IT services, library resources, online clubs, online shows and performances. So all the things that students are paying for, finding a way to still provide that in an online setting. So that was great to hear. There were some other concerns around practices not being followed and processes, specifically what's already documented and in writing to involve students and to make sure that the admin folks know that students are supposed to be involved. They don't always seem to have an understanding of that and why students are inquiring and asking questions. So wanting to make sure they know that students should be involved in these processes. And then for those that do know, sometimes there's some maybe a deliberate approach to maybe kind of hold off until students graduate so that some of the concerns that are being raised don't necessarily have to be addressed in the current year and they can kind of just start all over and continue that approach. So we got into kind of a culture shift and why that may be happening. You know, at UMGC, I don't want to say it was quite that way, but there was some concern initially about our student voices really being heard and how do we really get more engaged. And there's been a major culture shift, I would say, at UMGC where there's admin, there's faculty, folks that want to come to our student meetings every single month to engage us. So I like to see how we can do something similar across the institutions and make sure that's happening. As well as what the chancellor is doing. His roundtables are so successful. They're so engaging. We talked about doing things similarly across institution as well. So just an overall kind of in the spirit of collaboration, it's in the interest of all parties involved in opening up the discussion, making sure that students feel heard and can inform decisions being made and that institutions and the admin don't have to be afraid of that. It works out hopefully to everyone's advantage. So kind of that culture shift, we really talked about that a lot.
That's awesome.
All right, well, Bernetta, if you give recap, I'll do one. I'll try and go real quick. We talked about, let's see, UMB Healthy SU with the United Healthcare platform has been an issue and they're trying to deal with it. But if any other campuses have had an issue with United Healthcare in regards to their mental health platforms, get in touch with Emily Smith. You guys can talk about ways forward. We talked about, let's see, what can we do differently, outreach for mental health. And Zakia brought up that a lot of the counseling centers still have availability. So us as student leaders kind of work to with the counseling centers on your campuses to overcome any stigmas or any barriers to communication, push that word out that there is that capacity there to help more students. We talked about whether there was any non-school specific measures. Ashley shared 2on1.org and Beth shared a crisis text line. It's potentially controversial. Let's see. Annie mentioned that we need more empathy and flexibility towards our students coming from the faculty. And we are still looking for ideas and opportunities that, so if your school is doing anything interesting, like Paige shared, that the faculty allow students to walk outside and use the COM app, possibly mental health day, any ideas that you guys have on your campus that is successful that you think we could share among the other campuses, please reach out to Beth, let her know, or any of us, and we can collaborate and share those ideas that way. All right, I'm done.
Great recaps. Thank you for remembering the recaps. Much appreciated. Everyone, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend before we start back up, and good luck on midterms and all the things that you're doing all the time anyway. And we'll see you back here. We're available in the interim. Take care.
Bye.
Oh, that's weird. Like,
it's his little
where did that
book.
sound?
Yeah, it was his little book. He's pushing buttons.
Oh,
those cheeks.
Little Vinci.